I have been a babysitter since I was 13, so I have saved up a considerable amount of money. When I was 15, my dad got remarried about a year and a half after my mom passed away. My dad's wife had a 13-year-old daughter, and as soon as we moved in together, they started to push her off on me and force us to do everything together. I don't like my stepsister. She's always throwing tantrums if she doesn't get what she wants. She's spoiled to the point that at my 16th birthday she got her own special cake so she wouldn't feel left out. And she also blew out the candles on my cake, and when I complained, my dad told me it's time to grow up. Being a sister is about sharing things. I told him I didn't have a sister, and I guess she overheard and she went on a rampage. The party was ruined. I distanced myself more from them after that. I'm forced to either take her with me to places or stay home with her if I can't take her, or my dad or dad's wife can't watch her or don't want to deal with her. Imagine everything that I said she does with my dad and his wife to a 17-year-old me. I was forced to take her bowling with me, and she would not stop trying to dig her hands in the part where the balls come out, and she tried running down the lane, so I had to take her home and my night was ruined. This happens a lot, but they don't care. I have tried to keep this trip a secret from her, but when I was in my room on the phone talking about it over pizza and music, I found out she snuck in and hid in the closet and was eavesdropping. She bursted out asking if she could come, and I told her no and to get out. She started stomping her feet and she ran out. My friends begged me to not invite her. My dad called me downstairs and asked if she could go because she could use a vacation, and I told him I'm not taking her. They can take her on a vacation, but I'm not watching her for almost 3 weeks alone. My dad's wife called me selfish and that my dad was paying for a portion of it anyway, and if Lily doesn't go, then I don't get to go. I told her she doesn't get a say in any of this. She's not my mom, and to stop forcing her child on me when she created what she is. Lily starts yelling at me about not being a big sister, and I don't want to spend time with her. I snap and tell her I don't. She ran away crying, and my dad said he won't pay for the rest of my trip if I don't take her. So I told him if he does that I will not be talking to him anymore, nor will I forgive him for it. He said I'm being dramatic and she isn't bad. So I grabbed a bag and went to my aunt's house, my mom's sister, and told her what happened, and she said she would put up what he took away, and when I go to college, I can stay with her. I told my dad what I was doing, and he blew up at me and said I was being a brat and they're my family now and not my aunt. As far as I know, she does not have any disabilities. She's been to doctors and therapy. She's just insanely spoiled, and that's how she's always gotten her way when told no. The first time I met her, everyone agreed on Mexican except her, and she was yelling in the car for 10 minutes before she calmed down by her mom appeasing her. Then she goes back on her phone texting. If she does, then that explains why she acts that way, and I can take it that she can't help it, but I still shouldn't be forced to watch her 24/7's relevant comments. Commenter: your aunt is acting more of a family than your dad. I agree. See if you can live with your aunt now. Are you dependent on your dad for college? OOP. I am not. My mom left me money for 2 years. I decided to do an RN program and then go back once I work and save up more money. Commenter: if you are being truthful about Lily's behaviors, it sounds like she has some sort of emotional or intellectual impairment. Has she had a formal diagnosis? OOP. No, she is just extremely spoiled and acts like this to get her way. She knows she just has to cry a bit and stomp around and they'll give in. To another commenter: she does not have any mental problems. She's just spoiled. She's been to doctors and therapy. To a deleted and downvoted comment: I don't have nor did I want a sister. It's not even like they tried to slowly bring us together. They forced her on me. She constantly throws tantrums, so if any small thing is about me, she needs to be the center of attention. She may be a child, but she is not my child, and I shouldn't have had to become a parent because of my dad's wife's lack of parenting. Commenter: how far away from 18 are you? I would slowly start moving important things to your aunt's house and then move in the day you turn 18. Make sure you let your school know not to contact your dad anymore and that you are living with your aunt. Oopie. I turn 18 in September. I have read the comments and I'm making lists of everything I need to get and put at my aunt's house. On being the bigger person, I don't have to be a bigger person. I'm tired of being neglected and having her forced on me. I'm going on this trip without her, and if that ends up with me not talking to my dad anymore, so be it. He's the adult and parent here. Update post, August 30th, 2024. Almost 6 months later. I know a lot of people wanted an update to my last post, but I can't post a link so you can go to my profile to see it. The trip happened and I did not end up taking her like I said I wasn't. From the time that I posted that up until the time that I left, the household was very tense and awkward. I was not speaking to any of them. The only person I had to confide in and talk to my aunt, and I'm so grateful for her. My dad still thought that I was going to bring her on the trip, and I kept telling him that I'm not watching her and she is not coming with me. The morning of the trip we left at like 6 in the morning when he called me. I was already about 5 hours out, so he couldn't do anything. When I got back, it was a lot of yelling and crying from me and my dad and his wife. She said that I left them in a tough position and they had to stay home because they couldn't get anyone to watch Lily. My dad and I had a serious talk for hours and he agreed that maybe we need to separate so we can work on our relationship. Which hurt me because I would have liked for him to tell me I can stay in my own home while we do it. But I did end up going to my aunt's house with no issues. My dad and I started family therapy with just the two of us. His wife was pretty upset. He was actually listening to me and was seeing where I was coming from. Right when we were getting good and building a better relationship, I came over for dinner and he asked if we could integrate his wife and Lily into therapy, and I told him that I had no interest in having a relationship with them. She called me a selfish C******, and that I need to be grateful that she let me stay with them after she moved in. I waited for my dad to correct her and he was pretty much silent, so I left and I haven't talked to him in almost a month. He keeps showing me that he will not be on my side. So, to wrap things up, the cabin trip was so much fun. I have never felt so free from a burden. The trip was in June and we were there for almost a month. We extended it. When I was packing for school, my dad came to visit and I guess his wife called and he had to lie about where he was because I guess she didn't want him to see me. So I told him, we don't need to have contact right now or continue therapy because it's clear which part of his family he cares more about. I don't know what's going to become of my dad and right now I don't care. I'm focused on school and studying to become a nurse. I don't want any negativity to ruin this experience, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hurt that I don't have a parent to experience this with, but my aunt says she is my surrogate mom and to share all my worries and success with her. I am currently in my first week of college and the amount of freedom I feel here is also so new. I am a little overwhelmed, but I am in an honors club. I also am in a creative writing book club and the friends I have made are so amazing. I am currently living on campus and I have never been better mentally. I am getting separate therapy to deal with my mom's death because that was never offered to me by my dad. My aunt has truly become a mother figure to me. Being 2 states away from her is really hard, but I can't wait for weekend visits and holiday visits. Also, another thing is that I'm going to be a godmother. My aunt was told at 22 that she would never be able to have kids, and she is currently 4 months pregnant, and I'm so excited because if anybody is going to be a good mother, I know it's going to be her. When she came to visit and tell me I think she saw, I was a little worried. I told her I'm so excited and happy for her and nothing will change that, but she's the only family I have right now and don't want to get left behind like I did at home, and we cried and she promised me that she was filling in for my mom and she will be there for the rest of my life, whether I like it or not. I am planning the baby shower and I can't wait for the baby to be here. But yeah, that's it. Thank all for checking up on me and giving me encouraging words. Relevant comments. Commenter: I just don't understand how your dad doesn't see that Lily is a massive problem if they have to hire a babysitter at her age or being 15. And they were stuck at home with her as a result. OOP, he doesn't want to see it, or he does and cares more about keeping his wife happy. Commenter: also, what do you write about in this writer's club? OOP, bring in work you have written and share it. Write flash fiction from the same prompt. Write poems. Watch videos or lectures about writing techniques. Talk about writing contests or places to submit stories. We're talking about incorporating improv so we can be creative that way with our stories. Commenter: downvoted. I feel like you should have set some better boundaries instead of just giving up. You need to lay it out for him. Do you really think she's good for your life if she's keeping you away from your daughter? Are you really a man and a father? If you're going to let a woman dictate what you can and can't do, I would tell him straight up, you don't have the luxury of giving up because you made me. So I would appreciate if you get a goddamn backbone and start acting like it. OP. That's fair and I respect your opinion, but it's not my job to try and fix anything or set boundaries anymore. We did talk about it in therapy and he still tried to integrate them into the sessions when I have expressed hundreds of times I do not want that, so I'm done trying. I'm the child in this situation. I didn't tell my parents about my college money, then my dad stole it, causing an unforgivable betrayal that tore our family apart. Original: am I the asshole for not telling my parents that I received money from my college? May 14th, 2023. I, 20 years old, non-binary, live with my parents, in their 50s, and my 2 sisters, 20 years old and 19 years old. For as long as I can remember, my parents have had financial difficulties. For the past 4 months I have paid the entirety of my parents' rent. While I don't really make that much, I work 50 hours a week most weeks due to understaffing, so I get a pretty good paycheck. Plus most of the time I'm able to set aside some money for saving. However, these past months every one of my dad's paychecks, he makes the most money out of us all, have been garnished or been completely gone before he ever gets them. I have the misfortune of getting paid the exact same days as him. So the majority of my paychecks and all my savings have gone to paying for bills. 2 weeks ago my dad didn't get his paycheck and I ended up overdrawing my bank account $1,000. It was an accident as I had forgotten about a payment that I had made that had yet to show up. So when I got my paycheck on Friday it was just $100, which my dad immediately asked for 80 of. I had told my parents I would be unable to help financially for the next 2 weeks, and again my dad didn't get his check, so my parents are scrambling to get money together to avoid our utilities being cut off. My college does this thing. I don't know if every college does this or not, where you pay the full amount of your tuition and then at the end of the semester you get the amount of scholarships and financial aid paid to you. There is a deadline to get the money, however they hold it for you if you miss it. The most of the 2 years I have been going there I have forgotten to do that, so the money has been sitting around. I had missed the December deadline for the fall semester, but I got a jump on spring knowing that I would forget, and it is my last year at that college because I am transferring to another one. I promptly forgot about it. Well, on Friday I received an email from the bank system my college uses that I will be receiving the money. I had shrugged it off because most of the time I receive my money from that kind of stuff really late. So while the email said 1-2 business days, I was thinking it would be in June. So imagine my surprise when I see that day it was in my account. Also, considering that it has been sitting there for 2 years, it is a fair amount. I am by no means rich or anything, but it was certainly more than I had been expecting. I paid a bill that I just haven't been able to, and the majority is just sitting in my bank account. It's been 2 days and I haven't mentioned anything about the money. My parents never even knew I was getting money from my college due to my forgetfulness. I know that this money could help make sure that none of our utilities are cut off, but I can't seem to bring myself to tell them. I'm moving out soon, so this money could go towards giving me some breathing room or going to my classes this summer. So I really want to save it and not say anything, just let my parents assume that I only have $20 to my name. However, if the utilities get cut off, then I will be affected as well. I feel like such an asshole for not telling my parents about the money. I know that I'm just being selfish, but I am so tired of every penny I make going towards my family's bill. I know my mom feels extremely guilty every time they do this, but it is something they have to do to survive. So, am I the asshole? Edit. Since a lot of people are asking, here you go. My parents have a lot of payday loans from my childhood, other loans, and owe money to the state and IRS. My dad had at one point been accused of a gambling addiction. It runs in his family, and he had at one point had one. However, my parents have talked this out. My dad's company also has shitty communication, so we have no way of knowing when he is garnished and why until he gets paid. Everyone does work, but me and my dad make the most money. My mom works a minimum wage job. My sisters work part-time minimum wage jobs. My mom and 20-year sister do help pay bills. My little sister, however, does not. She is the type that has a little bit of money and goes wild. My parents pay for a lot of her stuff without ever seeing a dime for it. My parents are trying to stop that, however it is extremely difficult due to other factors that I will not get into on this post, as it has nothing to do with money. The reason I make a lot of money is because I'm a lifeguard, and due to the lack of them we are paid intensively. As many of you have suggested, I am moving out. I am moving to a different city this summer for classes. I honestly don't think I need to go to such extremes as some of you suggested. My bank account is separate from theirs. We do use the same bank though. My parents do not try to sneakily get my money, and the few times my dad has, I have called him out and berated him over it. My mom also feels extremely guilty about the entire situation, and as such I don't see her doing anything underhanded, and my dad, I have strict guidelines with him. I do have a ton of notifications for both my credit card and bank account to the point of $1 getting spent I will know. Also no, I will not be getting back the money that I have given to my parents. I am not even going to try. I'm not going to be another thing that they have to pay off, however some of your suggestions I will follow. My parents are aware, and I will remind them when I leave that I will not be able to pay things when they leave, as I will be both reducing my hours at work and having my own bills to pay, such as school and the apartment. Relevant comment the _eternal_veggie NTA. You are technically paying for school yourself, right? The student loans and scholarships are all in your name, so that money is yours. Put it into savings, use it to buy textbooks next semester. If it's money left over from your student loans, you'll technically have to pay it back when you start paying your loans. So might as well use it as you please. I received money back from college for a few semesters, like $600/semester. But at that time my parents paid for my tuition, only $1,500/semester, community college, so I just paid them back that money since it was theirs anyway. But when I started paying for myself, I kept that money for myself. OOP, I pay for college out of pocket, I don't have student loans and no one else has paid for my tuition, so it is absolutely my money. Update 1. Wibite for going no contact with my dad and technically being responsible for my parents' divorce. May 27th, 2023, posted 13 days later. So I, 20 NB, live with my parents and 2 sisters for now. I am moving out next month. So my dad decided to play a joke on me. He took my card and took out 90% of the money in my money out of my checking account. For those wondering about the college money I got from a previous post, it is in another savings account that is through another institution, so it is safe. He then put my card back in its original position and went to work. He did all of this around midnight. So I woke up in the morning to most of my money being gone. My first thought was that my dad took my card without asking, but my card was still in my wallet and where I left it. I had thought that someone had cloned my card and guessed my PIN. I sent off a quick text to my mom and called my bank. I spent a while doing that. I was so anxious, I was practically sobbing, and I'm not a person that really cries. That money was my deposit and rent for June. I then went into the living room and heard my mom arguing. I couldn't hear much, but I heard my mom exclaim, "What made you think it was a good idea?" Instantly dread filled me. I walked up to my parents' room. My mom was arguing with my dad on the phone. According to my dad, he found our cat playing with my card. He decided to take it and remove my money to teach me a lesson about leaving my card lying around and then go to work. My dad apologized to me and I just handed the phone back to my mom and stormed out of the room. My dad had pulled something like this to me before, except he took all of my money and then lost it. My dad claimed that he took the money to teach me a lesson for leaving my card around my family. Later on, he told me in private that he took it because he knew I was lying about the amount of money I had. I had been saving that money for a medical thing, so I was hiding it because my family is always in a state of financial distress and he would ask for it if he knew that I had it and I was just done being in constant pain. Anyways, there were clear flaws in the story he told us. First, I had my card and it was in my wallet exactly where I left it. That was a whole separate trip from going to work. Also, neither my wallet or my card have any sign of damage. My dad works out of the city, which is a 1.5 car ride from where we live. My mom said that she will drive me to my dad's work where we will pick up the money. We don't trust him to have it till he is done working due to what happened last time. He protested, saying that that will use too much gas and that he will drive down instead, as that will use the same amount of gas. This ultimately leads to my mom practically having the confirmation that he has started gambling again. My dad had a gambling addiction when I was younger, but he got help for it and had been clean for a while. As in her mind, why else would he be so adamant that we not go to his work? He came home and returned all the money to me. Yes, I counted over and over again to make sure. He apologized and I said nothing. My mom said that he didn't sound sincere. My dad blew up on her, saying that he had apologized over the phone and that he was obviously sorry about what happened. He later on apologized to me about that, but I ignored it and he doesn't seem to be talking to my mom. My mom has told me that she is going to talk to a lawyer and she is absolutely torn up about this. There have been so many issues with their relationship this past year, but this seemed to be the straw that broke the camel's back to leave her 40-year marriage to my dad. My sisters don't know what is going on, or if they do not know the whole situation. I told her that once I move out that I might go no contact with him. My mom got all sad and said she doesn't blame me for wanting to after all that my dad put me through. I'm honestly emotionally drained and dreading calling back my bank. My mom had this great weekend planned for us, but now there is an overwhelming feeling of dread and tension over everything. I was actually going to finally do something for myself that I had finally worked up the nerve to ask my mom about, but that had to be canceled. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm moving out soon, I would have called my friend and moved out today. I'm just done with my dad in this situation. At the same time, I feel such an overwhelming guilt. I know that I did the right thing, that I had to tell my mom and protect myself financially, but I don't know. I feel responsible for my parents separating, and me and my mom are the only ones that know that, even though my dad made his choice. The fact that I love my dad and I still want a close relationship with him like I never had yet. I can't imagine ever talking to him after he put me through all this. I also feel like I'm too emotional and hasty to make these decisions, as all of this happened today. Maybe I just need confirmation that I'm doing the right thing. So Wibta, another relevant comment. Snowflake 100000000 NTA. Your dad stole from you. Change your PIN number and passwords on everything. OOPO, absolutely. I reached out to my bank thinking that someone copied my card before I found out it was my dad. I am getting a new PIN, new card, and account information. Everything is being changed. Update 2. Update. Wibta for going no contact with my dad and technically being responsible for my parents' divorce. June 11th, 2023. Posted 15 days later. I know it's been 2 weeks since my last post, but a lot has happened since then. My parents are getting a divorce. I have mixed feelings about this. My mom has started to track my dad. I know invasion of privacy, but it was the only way to know for sure. Multiple times the tracker has put him at a casino when he claims he's working. My mom has figured that he has been getting his paycheck 2 days early and not telling anyone. My mom called a lawyer last Wednesday to talk about her next move. My dad isn't fighting it, which is honestly destroying my mom. Yesterday we got an eviction notice that we have to be out by the end of the month. This has happened before, but my dad has always explained it away. Apparently my dad, hasn't paid the rent in 4 months. My dad hasn't said anything about this. He now knows we are all seeing through him and his act. My mom and younger sister are going to live with my maternal grandparents. Me and my other sister are moving out to our own apartment at the end of the week. This makes me extremely angry, because my parents got the money for me to pay for the rent. Instead, it was going to my dad's gambling. I did a calculation for how much I gave them this year and I am horrified. It is over $10,000. All my savings for college, so many of my paychecks that I have given up to help my family have actually gone to my dad's gambling addiction. I feel so used and like a fool. I feel so betrayed. My mom has told me that she doesn't want me to go no contact with my dad. She wants to hold family dinners once everything has settled down and she has a place, and she is going to invite my dad. My mom still loves my dad and keeps saying that he is sick. I know this. I know he isn't well. That he has lost control, but I don't know if I can keep him in my life. He used me and manipulated me. I feel less like his child and more like his walking bank account. He broke our family, and even if it is because he's sick, I don't know if I can put it past me. I know that it would destroy my mom to cut my dad out of my life. I know you guys said I'm not the in my last post, but I still feel like one. I might add more later as I have to go to work. Edit. Adding some details I forgot about in a rush to go to work. One of the reasons that my mom is going to do these dinners is to give my dad a reason to get help. I honestly don't think that will work. First, my father is rarely with us or does stuff when he lives with us. I doubt he will go. Second, if the looming threat of divorce didn't kick him into gear, I don't think weekly dinners will. I have a really good relationship with my mom, so I do want to go to those dinners to spend time with her. But I don't know if I can face my dad if he decides to come. My mom wants me to have a good relationship with my dad, which is why she doesn't want me to go no contact with him. Also, some of it is likely her guilt for the situation and the fact I tend to be the person she goes to for help. Also, a lot of you have been confused by me being responsible for their divorce. Like I said, it was an update to a post that I had made previously. If you want all the information, go look at that post, but the rundown is I woke up and saw that someone stole my money. I told my mom and she figured out it was my dad. My mom realized that she needs to divorce my dad due to him lying about what happened. My mom has never told me that any of this was my fault. It was how I was feeling at the moment. I have since gotten over that guilt. Many of you have said that I should try to get the money back from my dad. I'm not sure. I made peace not getting the money back. I'm not going to take him to court. My life is already crazy without worrying about court and my dad's gambling addiction. Not to mention I really don't have proof that I could show the court, as I just gave the money to my mom. I never made any comments digitally what the money's for, so it will absolutely fall apart and become a he said they said. And honestly, I don't want to deal with it. I just want to move past this. Update 3. Am I the asshole for not wanting my dad to live with me? July 1st, 2023. Posted 20 days later. So I, NB20, live in my own apartment with my sister, 20, and roommate, M19. We moved in about 2 weeks ago. Due to events in one of my previous posts, me and her are the only ones in my family not homeless. My dad has been living in his car and staying in hotels when able. My dad has recently been hospitalized for a multitude of reasons. No, I won't go into detail. He is going to be released from some of the medical advice that is going to be given to my dad he can't follow due to being homeless. My parents haven't mentioned the fact that my dad's homeless or that they are in the middle of a divorce to the hospital. My mom is scared of what that would mean for him. My mom has asked me to talk to my roommates to see how they feel about my dad living with us temporarily. I agreed to it, but I honestly don't want to have him. This might be selfish, but he would be in my room due to the fact he works at night. He won't do my sister's room because her room is hyper-feminine and is only separated by a curtain from the living room. As I'm the one with an actual room, he would be sleeping in my room. Our schedules are pretty reversed, so we would never see each other except on my days off, but I really hate this idea. In our previous house, I had to share my room with my mom because of her working from home. This meant that whenever someone felt like it, they would barge into my room. I finally have my own space that no one could barge into, and not even 2 weeks later it might be stripped from me. Not to mention I am currently searching for another job due to the fact that I have moved to another city and no longer want to commute 3 hours each way, and I have a couple phone interviews lined up for my days off, and I can't go into the living room due to my roommates also having those days off, and I don't like talking on the phone in public. My dad has also not acknowledged that he has done anything wrong. I am also still pissed at him. He can't go with my mom and other sister due to my maternal grandparents hating his guts at the moment. He can't ask any of his family due to the fact that they are abusive, and he doesn't want to admit how bad his situation has gotten. So this just leaves me and my sister. My dad already doesn't like our roommate due to sexism and toxic masculinity. I don't think he will act in any way that will show it, but I really don't want to place him in a situation where he might have to deal with that. I have yet to tell my roommates, as they had already left when my mom asked, and I don't want to ruin their event or have this conversation over text. I'm very tempted to pay out all the reasons it would be a bad idea for them, so they agree that we can't do it, so I'm not the but I don't like the idea of manipulating them. My mom said that my dad probably won't accept the offer, but I'm not sure I can make the offer. Also, hotels are not an option due to the fact none of us have the money for them, and my dad will likely be paying off this trip for a while. I honestly feel like either way I'm screwed. So am I the asshole? Even another relevant comment: delete. This sounds way too big for Reddit to solve. OOP. Unfortunately, Reddit is my only solution because I have no one to talk to about this situation. Update 4. Am I the asshole for not sending my dad a happy birthday text? October 6th, 2023. Posted 4 months later. So yesterday was my dad's birthday. I'm 60. I, B20, have been pretty much no contact with him since my last post about him, only really seeing him here and there. My dad has reached out to me once, but I didn't respond. Never once has he apologized for what he has done. For the past week I had been debating if I should send him the above text. No matter what, I decided I wasn't going to get him anything after all the money he took from me. Then on Wednesday my phone got stolen. I spent most of Wednesday and yesterday trying to find it and come up with solutions so that I can do all the things I need to do. I thought that that was the answer to texting my dad. Yesterday I got a new phone and was talking to my mom. She texts me that I need to send my dad a text. She always reminds me to send birthday and holiday texts, as I'm notorious for forgetting to. I said I will later, as I still hadn't decided if I was going to. She then told me that she gave my dad $20 for me. I was shocked. She said all my siblings agreed to send him $20 for a hotel room. We all know he will probably gamble it away. I had never agreed due to my stolen phone. I was pretty much out of contact, but I had still talked to her through my roommates. She also could have waited and asked if I was okay with it, which I would have said no. I don't think my mom will ask for the 20, she just seemed to do it in my name. Regardless, I was pissed. So I didn't text my dad because I wanted to make sure he was aware that I haven't forgiven him and that we don't have a relationship anymore. I also did it to spite my mom for putting my name on a gift I never agreed to. I was so sure of it yesterday, but now I think I might have just been petty. My mom wants me to marry my creepy stepbrother and have his child. She now harasses me at work and lies about the inheritance. I, 29F, have an older stepbrother, Chris, 42M, who has been a nightmare since the day my mom married his dad. Let me give a bit of background. Our parents married when I was 4 and he was 17. Both our parents were widowed. After their wedding, we moved to the US since my mom had American citizenship through marriage. I was born in the US too, but after my dad died when I was 1, my mom and I moved back to Colombia. My stepdad got his residency through marriage, and my stepbrother, because he was a minor, wasn't a big fan of me. My only memories of him are just constant bullying. He would be left in charge of me since he was studying locally and lived with my parents. But mostly, his babysitting really meant things like locking me in the guest bathroom or the shed outside. He would steal my lunchbox whenever he was the one who dropped me off at school. He even began to harm my pets. I have an old cat that has been with me for almost 22 years. He tried more than once to run her over with his car. My parents never believed any of it. He's the classic golden child. My mom absolutely wanted a son instead of a daughter, so my stepbrother took priority over me. The bullying just kept getting worse and creepier. He had this long key for the bathroom. The door was designed so that if it got locked by accident, one could open it by inserting a long stick or key through a small hole on the outside. He would use it to walk in on me showering. My underwear would disappear sometimes, and I know for a fact it was him. He also started taking pictures of me sleeping. One night, I woke up to him taking care of himself next to me while I slept. I yelled, obviously. My parents came over, but he wasn't in trouble. I was, for tempting him. I was 14 when this happened. He was 27. No one helped me, and he got bolder until he did something I am still in therapy for. When I was 16, it got to a point where I called my biological half-brother, Sam, 48M, and son of my biological father's first wife, to see if I could live with him and his wife, Sandy, during my last 2 years of high school. When Sam found out what was going on, he confronted my mom. My mom didn't care and just told him to take me, as long as he never asked her for money. Done and done. My brother and his wife became my legal guardians and took me in with my cat and the old family dog since I didn't trust leaving any living creature with Chris around. My parents never checked on me. My extended family from my father's side knew what happened and immediately got together to ensure I could finish school well and go to college. I don't know my maternal family at all. Thanks to my paternal family, including Sam's mother and her family, I got my bachelor's and master's with no student debt and work as a nurse practitioner. I still live with Sam, his wife and their 2 kids, and I pay a small rent. Neither Sam nor his wife expected me to pay anything, but that's the least I can do for the 2 people who have taken care of me for 13 years. For anyone wondering why I didn't move, it's incredibly expensive where I live and Sam insisted I stay with them until I save enough to buy my own home. Things seemed okay until my mom messaged me recently. She had not messaged me since I was 18, when she told me she no longer had any responsibility for me. In this message, she sounded overly friendly, telling me how she missed me and asking how I was doing. I was a bit creeped out but decided to be nice, telling her about what I had done since leaving her care. She seemed very interested, as apparently, she knew I was a nurse but not what kind I was. She began asking me about my salary. I didn't tell her anything about it, except that it was enough to pay the bills. My mom then began texting about Chris and how he was barely making any money due to his student debt. Apparently, Chris never finished a degree, jumping from career to career. He is now working in my stepdad's used car business as a salesman, but most of his pay goes toward his substantial student debt accumulated over the years. I told my mom how sorry I was that Chris was having a hard time and wished him luck. That's when my mom finally got to what she wanted. She texted me that I needed to pay his student debt so he could finally begin to make the money he deserves, like the man of the family. I just turned off my phone. When I got home, Sam was surprised since I was usually the last to arrive. Sandy wasn't home yet. I told Sam what happened and showed him my mom's text messages. I don't think I've seen Sam this angry ever. He told me to block my mom, stepdad and Chris if I hadn't done so yet. After talking with Sam and Sandy, I called my boss to ask for the next day and the one after off. This gave me a 4-day weekend, including the days I'm normally off shift. My boss was more than okay with this and told me to just take it easy and let her know if she could help. This backfired because the next day, my mom and Chris decided to come to Sam's house to speak to me. I was alone since Sam and Sandy were at work and the kids were at school. I immediately called Sam and told him what was going on. He told me not to open the door and that he was on his way. My mom spent the whole time screaming that I owed them for raising me and that my sweet brother deserved the money. Chris was going around trying to find a window or door unlocked. There weren't any, since the windows have safety bars and the only other doors are in the closed garage and one in the yard. The yard door was locked, and just in case, I locked the one in the garage. I won't post what he called me when he saw me from one of the windows, but basically, he told me they should have thrown me away when I was a baby since I grew to be a burden. He pounded on one of the windows so hard that he cracked the glass. Eventually, he gave up and went back to the front door, clearly trying to kick it down. I didn't have anything to worry about. The door was a security door, but I was still very scared. Between yelling, threatening, pleading, and insults, I finally heard Sam screaming at them to get lost. I only saw things from the window. Sam pretty much dragged them both off the porch. They got to a point I couldn't hear, but I saw my mom and Chris looking pale and scared before they ran to their car and drove off way past the legal speed limit. Sam came in a bit later and immediately went into full protective brother mode, asking me if I was okay. He kept saying sorry and hugging me. Sandy arrived almost immediately after and looked like she was about to commit a felony. Apparently, Sam threatened them with filing charges for what Chris did to me when I was 16. My brother's ace, my stepdad, was willing to testify against his own son. That seemed enough to get Chris off our backs, but not my mom. Since then, it's been 3 days, and my mom has sent texts, called non-stop from various numbers, and rallied a group of people who are supposedly my maternal family to harass me for money. She claims that the money should legally be hers since she's my mother, and that it's my late father's missed child support. Sam is helping me find a lawyer to get a restraining order on my mom, and I plan to take my stepdad's offer to testify by pressing charges against Chris. I can't say I can forgive him for not stopping his son, but I appreciate that he's at least trying. I don't know the details, but Chris did something to a relative of his dad, and since then, they had a really bad fallout. I took my boss's offer and will be on vacation for a few more days. But here it is. My vacation days are getting eaten up and my therapist might need a therapist after this. Thankfully, my dark sense of humor and supportive paternal family are keeping me somewhat sane. Update. I didn't think I would be making an update so soon, but my mother is unrelenting. To the people who were so kind and gave me advice earlier, thank you so much. It really helps to have people show kindness in difficult days. I followed the advice to freeze my credit and will be getting a new phone for personal use. I'll have to keep my old phone for work for a little while. Now, to update on the situation, we are going through with pressing charges and might pursue a civil lawsuit for 2 years of child support my mother owes. We are not sure yet of our chances, but my brother wants to go scorched earth. As for my mother, she began a new campaign. She's been posting false accusations about me, accusing my stepbrother Chris of sexual assault. She's also been accusing me of being a temptress who tried for years to sleep with my brother. She even got a few relatives, who I just found out are my aunts, to join in, claiming they were witnesses. I have never met these women in my life. My stepfather actually commented on her post, saying my mom was lying and accusing his own son of being a pedophile. That's how I found out about the big fallout between them. My stepbrother apparently went after one of my stepfather's nieces. I don't know the girl's age, but she has to be about my age if I'm thinking of the right person. If not, she's younger than me. A lot of my biological father's relatives have also taken to social media to call out my mother, saying she had always claimed she was an orphan and had no family, while now she suddenly has 3 sisters. It's a mess. I'm just watching for now and being a stay-at-home aunt. My nephews love it since we go out for crazy shenanigans after they finish their homework. My boss has helped me with some paperwork for a leave of absence, and I should be off for about 6 weeks. After that, I'll be mostly working from home for a few weeks. It's not the greatest update, and to be sincere, things are not fun, but it's nice to spend time with the kiddos at least. Also, I forgot to mention this. No, my mom is not likely sleeping with or in a relationship with my stepbrother, as some people had mentioned. My mom always wanted a son, and I was a disappointment because I was born a girl. She treats my brother like he's her real son, and I think she truly loves him as a mother. She made sure to tell me how disappointing it was for her when I was born. Update 2. I hope the title is okay for the rules. I was recommended to post here but wasn't sure where to start. My mother was widowed when I was 1 year old. My biological father was much older than her. She was his second wife, with a 20+ year age difference. After that, she remarried her hometown sweetheart and adopted his 17-year-old son. My dad was American, and my mom is Colombian. I was born in the US, then we moved back to Colombia for a few years, and we returned to the US when I was 4. My whole life, my mother constantly complained about the fact that I was a girl. She would say things like, "If you were a boy, maybe we could have gotten more from your father." Or "Girls are so useless." All I was to her was the problem child. She took my inheritance and squandered it, mostly on things for my stepbrother. Whenever she had guests, she would always introduce me and joke about how I ruined her body and wasn't even worth it since I was a girl. Most of her friends thought I had some kind of mental illness because of her lies about me being mentally behind. She used the R word and would often blame it on my gender, saying that because I was born a girl, I was clearly inferior. During holidays, I would be left behind with a sitter. I was just too much of a problem child and would ruin things for my sweet brother. We only have one family picture from when I was 5. If I got anything nice with my own money, my mother would take it from me. If it was something like makeup or clothes, she would say I wasn't attractive enough or worthy enough to have such nice things. I should just stick with a plain face since it would make it easier for me to find a job when I was done with high school. She had no intentions of letting me go to college. But the worst part is, she never protected me. My stepbrother is a predator. At first, he just bullied me, stealing my food and locking me in dark places. When I hit puberty though, he began to do worse things. Walking in on me when I showered, even if I locked the door. Stealing my underwear, watching me sleep. And he even sexually assaulted me when I was 16 and he was 29. My mother blamed it on me, saying I was tempting her poor sweet boy. I was saved by my biological half-brother and his wife. They took me in at 16, finished raising me, and put me through college with the help of my paternal family. Even my father's first wife pitched in and has always been kind to me. She's more of a mother to me than my own mother ever was. Now I'm I'm 29 years old, have a good career as a nurse practitioner, and I'm saving to buy my own home. My mother found out about this and has been demanding that I give her my money because she is my mother, and my money should be hers. She also demands that I pay off my abusive stepbrother's student loans. Since I refuse to comply with my dear mother's demands, she has now gone online to post that I'm a temptress trying to ruin her son's life and that I refuse to pay her back for all the care and love she supposedly gave me over the years. She even had some women, who are supposedly my aunts, join her in this. I've never met any of my maternal family. As far as I knew, my mother was an orphan. Now, I suddenly have 3 aunts who claim to have seen how bad a person I am. Update 3. This might be my last update about my mother and stepbrother since we're finally starting the legal fights, but I finally had a good laugh. In my previous posts, I haven't said much about my biological father. He died when I was 1 year old, so I never really met him. I have one picture of him holding me when I was an infant. I mostly know him from stories from his family. What I do know is that he was a man of means. He had a lot of assets that he carefully divided in his will. Not so rich I'll never have to work rich, but just rich enough that I would be able to live comfortably as long as I worked and managed my finances well. I was not aware that he had made sure to leave me anything, and neither was my half-brother Sam, his son with his first wife. I'm the daughter of an affair partner turned second wife. My understanding was that anything I inherited was wasted by my mother to buy things for her predator stepson Chris, whom she prefers over me. He was my abuser growing up. In her words, daughters don't need inheritance, just marry a wealthy old man like me. Well, since my mother and Chris have been harassing me lately, we drove to my dad's lawyer to get some things we need from my dad's records for the lawsuit we are planning. He's a sweet older man who kind of looks like my dad a bit and was my dad's best friend. When we met, he received me with a hug and told me how happy he was to finally meet me. His wife was there too, and she also gave me a big hug and told me we needed to have dinner at their place. Once we all caught up, we discovered my mother had been faking receipts to get money from my trust. A lot of it, some of which was from when I was under Sam's guardianship. She's not the executor of my trust and had to provide receipts for anything. She's been sending receipts claiming they're for me because I'm still in medical school, even though I finished school in 2021. Well, her meal ticket not only got torn, but now she's in big trouble because this is fraud. And basically, my hands are tied about pressing charges. She claims me as a dependent on her taxes, so my dad's lawyer would refund her for her expenses. He basically told me there's just no way we can keep this in civil court. He had to contact the IRS and the police. It doesn't help that she's been using my social security number for some things she shouldn't. Thank you to the people who advised me to freeze my credit. You guys saved me for sure. I probably won't be able to post for quite a while since I'm going to be incredibly busy. I'm just mentally exhausted from how much has happened. I wouldn't have done anything about my mom using my trust if she had left me alone. I wouldn't even know about it because the trust is set for me to take over with proof of marriage or graduation from college. Since I didn't know about it, I never sent the required paperwork to take control. She could have milked it dry if she left me alone and just kept sending fake information. I'm in the process of getting what's left of my trust. There's quite a bit in it, and it should be enough for me to get a house or condo if I mix it with my savings and still have some left over to invest or do other things safely. I might wait for a while to buy anything though. I don't know how safe it would be since my mom still has my social security number. Update 4. Hey Reddit, this is more of a personal rant than a full-on update. Things are only starting on the legal side of things, so no real update or information I'm allowed to share. This is more on the personal side of things since I just came home from having my mother harass me in a bar. It was not fun. Short background. My mother is a greedy liar who let her stepson Chris, who's 13 years older than me, abuse me since I was a small child. First, it was physical abuse, then sexual abuse started when I was 14 until I was 16. Now she wants me to clear a student debt, and she has been mooching off my biological father's inheritance. As for last night, well, I decided to go out with some girlfriends for a girls' night. My half-brother Sam and his wife Sandy have been pushing me to go out for a while. We went to a local bar. I mostly stuck to the stools by the bar as I'm a massive introvert, but I like seeing my friends having fun. So I was simply drinking and talking to the bartender in passing. Well, my good mood was ruined when I noticed my mother, thankfully alone, walk towards me. The moment she saw me, she pretty much launched herself to hug me and began crying, saying how much she had missed me and how different I looked. I was trying really hard to get away from her, but she began causing a scene. She started begging for us to reconcile, saying that she was sorry I took my stepbrother's affection the wrong way, that they both love me and want me to live with them. She was loud, and people were looking at me. Some even looked sorry for her, and I had people encouraging me to hug my mom back. It was embarrassing and just so wrong. I just exploded and told her to leave me alone and walked out. That was even worse because she kept following me, with 2 or 3 randoms calling me a terrible daughter. She just kept swearing that Chris truly cares for me and wants us to be a family again. She even said that he found me so beautiful that he couldn't help himself when he sexually assaulted me. She said, when he made love to you. As if it was something consensual. I was a minor when he attacked me. He was almost 30. I just started crying and screaming at her to go away and leave me alone. Thankfully, one of my more sober friends called Sam, and he came over very fast. He scared away my mom and took me home. I'm now 100% sure I don't want to go out again. For people wondering why I never called the cops, I called the cops since I was 11 to report the abuse. I reported at 16 what he did to me. They took his side. I don't trust them. I truly believe cops don't care about sexual assault victims. I'm just writing this to get it out of my system. My therapist is unavailable, so Reddit is the next best thing. Update 5. Hey, been a bit sorry for the radio silence. I had some people asking for updates, but things had been pretty quiet until this weekend, so I had nothing to post. I know people usually do a recap app or something like that, so TLDR. My mother has always preferred my stepbrother Chris, who is 42. He was my abuser growing up. The abuse went from the time I was 11 to 16, when I moved in with my half-brother after the worst attack. I was recently tracked down by my mother, and she along with my stepbrother have been harassing me since. Currently, I'm in a legal fight against them to recover some stolen inheritance from my father and to resolve other matters. This weekend, once again, my mother decided to accost me at work. I was working from home, doing clerical work for the clinic I work at. I'm a nurse practitioner but took some clerical duties to be able to work from home when the mess with my mother and Chris began. Since then, the time I could work from home has ended, so I'm back in the clinic taking patients. For the most part, Saturday went well and quiet. Sunday, however, I noticed someone that shared my mother's name but not her last name. My mom has a very unique name, very old sounding, and I've seen it only twice in my whole life. Of course, there's a big Latino community where I live, so I just assumed this was another person. We're from a Colombian family, though I was born in the US to an American father. Lo and behold, it was my mother using a fake last name. When I saw her, I immediately called my boss. She's aware of the situation and immediately went to ask my mother to please leave the premises. This can be a controversial move, so to explain it before the debate starts. She was in for a general checkup, not a life or death treatment. She was not denied because of protected reasons, but because I, as a member of staff, felt my life was in danger in her presence. There are a lot of other clinics with varying prices, and they are open to new patients, so she can get her checkup anywhere else. This is allowed under our state's law. If she was hyperventilating or clearly in distress, we would not have been able to ask her to leave. My mother, of course, went on a rampage demanding to be seen by me specifically. My boss, thankfully, was not intimidated and just insisted my mother had to leave or else the cops would be called. After a back and forth that I was watching from the security cameras, this all happened in our waiting room. My mother threw a letter at my boss and left fuming. She even pushed a lady that was walking in, though thankfully no one was hurt. My boss brought me the letter and told me she will make sure not to assign me any patients with my mother's first name and went to make arrangements with our front desk. I took a break and decided to read the letter, mostly to see if it was something I could use for my legal case. This is a translation to my best capabilities. My lovely daughter, it hurts me so much that you refuse to speak to me. I love you so much, and all I want is to recover the years we've lost. I only have you left from your father, whom I love dearly. I know there are a lot of misunderstandings with Chris. He loves you so much too, and I wish you would give him a chance to prove it to you. He always talked about how beautiful you are and how much he wished you two could spend more time together. He truly adores you, and I wish you would consider his feelings more. He even asked me to convince you to marry him, and I think it's a wonderful idea. Papa, your stepfather, and I are probably divorcing, and this will be the perfect solution so Chris, you and I can stay a family. He keeps going on and on about how much he wants to raise you and his baby together. Let me know when you want to go shopping for wedding dresses. I love you, my darling. Mom, I'm going to share a few personal notes here. I am unable to get pregnant. After Chris's attack, I had some medical complications that have left me unable to conceive. My mother knows about it. Chris knows about it. The cops know about it. They ruled the whole thing as consensual sex, and because I was 16, the legal age of consent, nothing was done. I showed this to my lawyer. and he added it to the compilation of things we're using for the legal case. Still no court date, and the cops don't consider my case risky enough to do the paperwork for a restraining order. I do have one officer who is taking this very seriously and has been amazing. It's just the majority who don't seem to care or have too much on their docket to give my case time. Update. I'm going to update here since it's only been 3 days and it feels dumb to make a new post. Chris has been arrested. Apparently, he kidnapped a 2-year-old baby girl, his cousin's daughter, no less. The baby was recovered safe and unharmed from what I heard. I'm glad she wasn't taken for long. Who knows what the hell he wanted to do to her. If I hear more details, I'll update. My stepmom left my dad after I refused to let her walk me down the aisle, and now he has a shocking confession before my wedding. I'm Lily, a 28-year-old woman who will marry her fiancé Richard, a 30-year-old man, in 3 months. To comprehend my current circumstances, I must return to my childhood. My parents, Claire, 53F, and Tom, 55M, met at college and married young. They had me when they were both 25, and for the first 10 years of my existence, we seemed like the ideal family. I remember spending weekends at my grandparents' lake house, where Dad taught me how to fish while Mom made lunches. Every Friday, we had family game night, and my parents took turns reading me bedtime stories. It wasn't perfect, they argued like any couple, but I always felt loved and secure. Everything changed when I was 10. Dad began working late more frequently, and Mom appeared increasingly tense and sad. I overheard arguments about someone named Tanya, but I had no idea what was going on. Then, one day, I returned home from school to find Mom crying in the kitchen. She sat me down and told me that Dad had an affair with his coworker, Tanya, 48F, and they were getting divorced. The following few months were a jumble of tears, conflicts, and bewilderment. Dad moved out, and I remember being furious with him for hurting Mom and splitting up our family. The divorce was messy and traumatic. There were intense debates over custody and property partition. I recall sitting outside the courtroom during one of their sessions, feeling disoriented and terrified. In the end, Mom received primary custody, with Dad receiving visits every other weekend. At first, I was hesitant to spend time with Dad. I was angry and sad, and I did not want to leave Mom alone. Mom, despite her own anguish, pushed me to give Dad another chance. She informed me, "Your father made a mistake, but he still loves you. It's fine to adore him too." Gradually, I began to like spending weekends with Dad. He'd take me to the movies, show me how to cook, badly, and we'd have lengthy discussions about school and my friends. Things became more problematic when Dad declared 2 years after the divorce that he was marrying Tanya. Tanya and I met for the first time at a dinner Dad had arranged. She appeared pleasant enough, bringing me a gift, a diary with my name embossed on it, and inquiring about my interests. But I couldn't get rid of the idea that she was the reason my family had come apart. Tanya worked hard to establish a bond with me after Dad and Tanya married. She was constantly buying me gifts, clothes, books, art supplies, and recommending mother-daughter activities such as spa days or cooking classes. However, her efforts felt forced to me, and I was never comfortable around her. Part of it was out of loyalty to my mother, and part of it was because Tanya appeared to be attempting to replace her. As I approached adolescence, my connection with Dad and Tanya deteriorated. They would frequently make disparaging remarks about Mom, such as, "It's a shame your mother is so bitter," or, "If only your mother could move on like we have." These statements bothered me because I understood how hard Mom worked to co-parent harmoniously. My mother, on the other hand, never spoke negatively about Dad or Tanya in front of me. She listened to my complaints but always pushed me to give them another shot. "They're not perfect," she'd continue, "but they try. It's acceptable to have many relationships with different people in your life." Tanya became pregnant when I was 16 years old. Dad was overjoyed, continually mentioning how happy he was to have a real family now. Those words struck deep because they made me feel like I wasn't enough for him. Like I was a relic of his past rather than an important part of his new existence. Tanya had a miscarriage at 20 weeks. It was a tough time for them, and I recall feeling a combination of anguish for their loss and guilty relief that I would not be replaced by a new baby. Dad informed me that Tanya would require additional love and support from me, which put a lot of strain on me at a time when I was already dealing with usual teenage concerns and the lingering consequences from the divorce. Tanya's attachment to me grew stronger following the miscarriage. She began introducing me to everyone as her daughter, which made me very uncomfortable. She also started urging me to call her Mom, something I flatly refused to do. This resulted in several arguments, with Dad always siding with Tanya and accusing me of being insensitive to her feelings. During this time, my relationship with my mother remained solid. She was my rock, always willing to listen without judgment and provide support without pressuring. She encouraged me to pursue my interests, which led to me joining the school newspaper and later studying journalism in college. I met Richard in college. We were both writing for the campus paper and bonded over our shared interest in investigative reporting. Richard's family was much easier than mine. His parents were still happily married and he had 2 younger siblings. I was initially cautious to let him inside my delicate family relationships, but his tolerance and understanding allowed me to open up. All of these previous concerns have finally come to a head as we prepare our wedding. I have chosen to ask my mother to walk me down the aisle. She's been my steadfast supporter, role model, and greatest friend. When I told Dad and Tanya about my decision, Tanya fell into tears and Dad became enraged. They told me I was being selfish and that Tanya should also lead me down the aisle because she had been in my life for so long. I refused, stating that my mother is my soul mother and the person I want at my side on my wedding day. This sparked a heated dispute, with Dad threatening not to attend the wedding if Tanya wasn't given a particular position. He mentioned all the times Tanya tried to be there for me, the presents she bought, the activities she planned, but to me, such things pale in contrast to my mother's unwavering love and support. Tanya blamed me of never giving her a chance and claimed that after all these years, she considered me her own daughter. She brought up her miscarriage again, expressing how difficult it had been to lose a baby and then have her stepdaughter reject her. I understand that the miscarriage was difficult for her, but I don't think it's appropriate to use it as emotional leverage against me. I'm sticking to my decision, but now I'm wondering if I'm being too severe. Richard fully supports me, saying that it is our wedding and we should do whatever feels right to us. However, some of my extended family members believe I should make a compromise to keep the peace. Part of me feels bad for hurting Tanya's feelings, but a larger part of me is upset that Dad and Tanya are attempting to make my wedding about them. I've spent years attempting to negotiate this blended family arrangement, often at the price of my own emotions. I want my wedding day to be a celebration of love, not a battleground for old family feuds. Am I an asshole for refusing to have my stepmother lead me down the aisle? Should I stick to my decision or seek a compromise? Update 1. It's been a month since my previous post, and a lot has changed. First and foremost, I'd want to thank everyone for their encouraging words. They greatly increased my confidence in my decision. After the wedding quarrel, my father and Tanya stopped communicating to me for a few weeks. It was a stressful situation, and I found myself continually checking my phone, half expecting and half fearing a message from them. Richard was quite helpful at this time, telling me that it was acceptable to prioritize my own sentiments and that I was not responsible for controlling their emotions. Tanya called me unexpectedly, weeping. She apologized for pressing me throughout the years and stated that she simply wanted to be close to me. Her voice sounded truly sorry, and for a little time, I felt a ray of optimism that we might be able to go forward. She asked if we could meet for coffee to talk things over, and after some hesitation, I accepted, thinking it would be a good opportunity to clear the air before the wedding. We met in a neighborhood cafe that I used to frequent in college. It was weird to be seated across from Tanya in a setting that brought back memories of study sessions with friends and early dates with Richard. At first, everything appeared to be going well. Tanya was surprisingly sympathetic, even saying she accepted my choice to have my mother follow me down the aisle. She told my father some anecdotes about her own wedding, including how scared she was and how she wished she had a closer relationship with her stepmother. I found myself softening slightly, viewing her as a person with her own troubles and fears rather than the woman who had ended my parents' marriage. However, things took a turn when she mentioned that she and my father were thinking about renewing their vows next year. At first, I assumed she was just discussing their plans, but then she dropped a bombshell. She offered that I walk her down the aisle at their vow renewal ceremony to balance things out. This suggestion stunned me. It felt like she was attempting to establish a quid pro quo, as if my wedding and their vow renewal were somehow interchangeable. I explained that a daughter's wedding is not the same as a vow renewal. Tanya became agitated and accused me of not giving her a chance. She mentioned the miscarriage again, explaining how difficult it had been and how she had hoped that having a kid would bring our family closer together. She stated that losing the baby was especially devastating since she believed she had missed her chance to actually be a mother. I attempted to be empathetic, recalling how awful that time had been for everyone, but I also stated that her death, while tragic, did not require me to regard her as my mother. I said that I had my own complicated thoughts at the time, feeling both sad for their loss and pleased that I would not be replaced. The conversation rapidly degenerated from there. Tanya accused me of being cold-hearted and ungrateful for everything she had attempted to do for me over time. She mentioned every gift she had ever given me and every outing she had planned, as if keeping track of her attempts at motherhood. I emphasize that genuine connection and respect for limits are what sustain relationships, not gifts and forced outings. In the heat of the moment, I uttered something I had been keeping quiet for years. I informed Tanya that, while I was sad for her loss, I was tired of her using the miscarriage as emotional leverage. I said it wasn't fair to put the responsibility of her unfulfilled maternal urges on me, especially when I was only a teenager trying to deal with my own familial tragedy. Tanya burst into tears and walked out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, feeling guilty, angry, and relieved that I had finally spoken my actual sentiments. As I sat there trying to digest what had just transpired, I couldn't help but think about how this cafe, which had once held wonderful memories, would now be forever connected with this awful confrontation. My father called me later that evening, enraged. He claimed I had been harsh to Tanya and owed her an apology. He accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, claiming that Tanya had always wanted to love me. When I tried to explain my side of the story, he interrupted me, stating that if I couldn't accept Tanya as my mother, perhaps I shouldn't consider him my father anymore. Those remarks struck me hard. Despite our disagreements throughout the years, I never questioned that my father loved me. But in that moment, it felt like he was choosing Tanya above me, just like he had done years before when he abandoned our family for her. I am hurt and outraged, but I am also more certain than ever in my decision. Richard has been wonderfully supportive throughout this process, hugging me when I cry and assuring me that I have every right to set boundaries. We're going forward with our wedding plans, aiming to create a day that celebrates our love and the family we're starting together. My mother has also been fantastic. When I told her what had happened, she listened without judgment and offered consolation without attempting to influence my decision. She reminded me that family connections are complex and that it is acceptable to prioritize my own emotional well-being. After a few days of thought, I've decided to send my father and Tanya a farewell message. In it, I intend to express my emotions and boundaries clearly. I want to make it clear that, while I am open to having a connection with them, it must be on terms that respect my sentiments and my relationship with my mother. I'll tell them that if they can't accept it, they won't be invited to the wedding. As I sit here writing this message, I can't help but feel a mixture of loss and relief. It isn't the relationship I hope I could have with my father and stepmother, but it's the healthiest I can provide right now. Am I doing the right thing, or am I being overly harsh and potentially excluding them from this key day in my life? Update 2. Another month has passed, and things have only gotten more confusing. After I wrote a message to my father and Tanya describing my feelings and boundaries, I didn't hear from them for a few weeks. The silence provided both relief and anxiety. I tried to concentrate on wedding planning, finalizing the menu, having clothing fittings with my mother and working on our vows with Richard, but the unresolved problem with my father and Tanya remained in the back of my mind. Then, last Saturday, my father arrived to my flat unannounced. I was in the process of addressing invitations with Richard when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see my father standing there, fatigued and upset. I invited him in, more by surprise than anything else. Richard, sensing the tension, excused himself to give us some peace, but not before gently caressing my hand. When we were alone, Dad broke down. He informed me that Tanya had left him. Tanya apparently had a breakdown following our disagreement at the coffee shop and my message. She informed my father she couldn't take the rejection longer and needed to find herself. She packed her luggage and left to reside with her sister in another state. As I listened to my father pour out his heart, I was overcome with emotion. Part of me felt justified. Hadn't I been warning Tanya for years that her relationship to me was unhealthy? But another part of me felt guilty. Had my inability to accept her as a mother figure truly caused so much pain? Dad was a mess, alternately apologizing to me and blaming me for Tanya's departure. He explained that he didn't know how to solve things and asked if I would try family therapy with him and Tanya. The concept made me uncomfortable. I told him I wasn't prepared for that, especially since Tanya had left him and I wasn't sure where we all stood. Then my father revealed another bombshell. He admitted that years ago, when Tanya miscarried, they had been trying for a baby because Tanya believed it would help me accept her as a mother figure. He admitted that they were wrong to try to replace me or push a mother-daughter bond. This information surprised me. It explained a lot about their behavior over the years, including the increased pressure to bond with Tanya, the continuous comparisons to a real family, and the guilt-tripping following the miscarriage. However, it also made me angry. I felt manipulated, like my feelings had been ignored in their effort to build their ideal family. I told my father I needed time to comprehend everything and begged him to go. I was overwhelmed as I closed the door behind him. I contacted my mom because I needed her calm presence and smart guidance. She listened attentively as I explained everything, then suggested that I take some time to seriously consider what I want my relationship with my father and Tanya to look like in the future. Now I'm feeling conflicted. On the one hand, I feel vindicated in my decision to maintain boundaries with Tanya. Her leaving my father appears to demonstrate that her attachment to me was motivated more by her selfish desires than real concern for me. On the other side, I feel horrible for my father, who appears truly sorry and bewildered. Richard believes I should keep my boundaries, but be open to repairing a connection with my father over time. He pointed out that, while my father's confession regarding the pregnancy attempt was hard to hear, it was also a step forward in honesty that we had not experienced previously. My mother, when I told her what had transpired, was surprisingly sympathetic to my father. She believes that when individuals are thirsty for affection and acceptance, they can make serious blunders. She reminded me of how young my father was when they had me, and how he may have been attempting to recreate the family life he believed he had lost. The wedding is now only a month away, and I'm not sure what to do about my father's invitation. Should I still invite him, giving him the opportunity to be a part of this special day? Should I contact Tanya now that I understand her motivations? Should I focus on my own happiness while they deal with their problems? As I sit here, staring at the stack of unsent invites, I understand that this decision is about more than the wedding. It's about the future relationship I desire with my father and whether Tanya has a role in my life. It's about striking a balance between compassion and self-protection, as well as determining what forgiveness looks like in a circumstance where the wounds are deep. Update 3. The wedding was last weekend, and I wanted to provide a last update on how everything worked out. After considerable thought and several long conversations with Richard and my mother, I decided to keep my father's invitation to the wedding open, but I made it plain that it was only for him and not Tanya. I sent him a long email explaining my decision. I informed him that I was willing to work on our relationship, but it would take time, and that he needed to respect my boundaries. I also conveyed my wish that he would attend the wedding to celebrate this special day in my life, but I understood if he felt unable to attend without Tanya. To my amazement, my father accepted these terms. He responded to my email again, apologizing for everything and expressing his want to be present on my wedding day. He also stated that he and Tanya were still separated, and that he was beginning to see how much their relationship had influenced me over the years. Last-minute preparations dominated the week leading up to the wedding. My mother was an unwavering source of support, assisting with everything from floral arrangements to easing my pre-wedding nerves. Richard's family visited from out of town, and witnessing how well they got along with my mother made me happy for the loving, drama-free family I would marry into. On the wedding day, I was a ball of nervousness and excitement as my mother helped me into my dress. We both shed tears as she told me how proud she was of the lady I'd become and how glad she was that Richard and I had met. It was a memory I'll keep forever. The ceremony was amazing. Walking down the aisle with my mother by my side felt just beautiful. I noticed my father seated in one of the front rows, appearing distraught yet smiling when our gazes met. Richard's reaction when he saw me go down the aisle was all I had hoped for and more. During the reception, I was busy welcoming visitors and enjoying the festivities with Richard, but I noticed my father looking sad and lonely at moments. He put on a brave face whenever he noticed me gazing. To my amazement, he had a cordial chat with my mother at one point. They were never going to be friends, but the fact that they could be in the same room without causing tension was a relief. After the wedding, after things had settled down a little, my father and I had a long conversation. He apologized once more for everything and promised to try harder to be a good father. He recognized that he had made numerous mistakes, particularly in attempting to force a connection between Tanya and myself. He also informed me that Tanya had decided to stay with her sister indefinitely, and they were discussing a trial separation. I'm cautiously enthusiastic about mending my relationship with my father. We've decided to start with monthly dinners for just the two of us to reconnect without pressure. It won't be easy, and there'll be a lot of pain to deal with, but I'm willing to try. I chose not to contact Tanya right now. I believe we both require time and space to recover and move forward. Maybe eventually we'll be able to talk about everything that happened, but for now, I'm focused on my new life with Richard and mending my relationship with my father. This entire experience has been a roller coaster, but I'm glad I held my ground. I'm starting my married life with a better awareness of my family dynamics and more firm limits. The wedding proved to be more than simply a celebration of my love for Richard. It also marked a fresh beginning in my relationship with my parents. Richard and I are finally settling into married life, and it feels great to face the future together, knowing we can deal with anything that comes our way. We are planning a belated honeymoon to Japan next month, which we are both looking forward to. Thank you to everyone who helped me on this journey. Your guidance and encouragement helped me get through this terrible situation and begin this new chapter in my life on a positive note. It won't be easy, and there'll be a lot of pain to deal with, but I'm willing to try. After my sister stole from me, my mother wants to defend her by sending me to military school. This took place when I was 14 years old, approximately 1 year before the divorce of my parents. My younger sister would always spend her allowance as if it were water, particularly on things like makeup, meals from the mall, video games, and clothing from Hot Topic that she purchased. In spite of the fact that I was also given an allowance, my father made me earn it by cleaning the house and working in the yard. My mother never forced my sister to do any duties, with the exception of cleaning her room, and my sister never did anything she didn't want to do unless her father was present to oversee her. In order to acquire additional funds, I mowed lawns, collected abandoned cans from various locations throughout the area in order to exchange them for a 5-cent deposit, and performed various other odd tasks across the neighborhood. I was putting money down at the time in order to get a scooter so that I could go around town. During the course of 2 years, I was able to save almost $2,000 by working a variety of odd jobs and putting away the majority of my allowance. The accumulation of that money, on the other hand, was not a simple task, primarily because of my sister. Despite the fact that she was aware of all the small hiding places where I used to keep my money, she would steal from them. The following is a memorable passage that I have paraphrased from what I remember. My response: "Hey sis, did you take my money again?" "Sister, what is it?" "No." When she was caught in the act of lying, she would stutter. "You are a terrible liar," I said to you. $100 is missing from my savings account. Sis is saying, "Leave me alone, I didn't do it." She begins to act as if she is crying and then rushes to her mother. Sis is saying, "Mommy, bro is picking on me." My response: "She stole from my savings again." "Shut up," my mother yelled at me while snapping her fingers. "Is it not obvious that Mama's little girl is feeling upset? That is all there is to it?" She said that she did not do it, so it is safe to assume that she did not do it. "In that case, I'll put you on the ground if you don't let this go." The other person: "I know she did it, and if you don't get the money back, I'll get Dad's help." "Mom, there is no longer any requirement for that. Another thing is that you don't have any evidence that she stole your money." "Yes, I do," says I. "Every single dollar that I add to it is recorded in a ledger that I keep. A total of X was reached 3 days ago. However, at this point, there is only Y. There is a missing $100, and you are aware that she has already stolen from my savings account on multiple occasions. That being said, I am aware that sis has already used up all of her stipend for this month, but you still went shopping yesterday. Exactly where did she obtain the money, don't you think?" Following a brief moment of reflection, Mom scowls. "What do you know, mister? You are firmly planted. I am going to grab the belt if you do not go to your room," she said. I had the ability to discuss the matter further. However, if there is one thing that I picked up from being in that environment, it was the knowledge of when to stop talking and simply call my father. Therefore, without uttering a single word to either of them, I made my way to my room and slammed the door shut. After that, I reached for my brick-like Nokia cell phone, which I had at the time, and dialed my father's number while he was at work. After he did not pick up the phone, I left a message in which I explained everything. He contacted me back about an hour later and assured me that he will take care of the situation. Not long after that, I heard the ringing of the landline phone in the house, and then I heard my mother yelling at my father as she was on the phone in the kitchen. It was difficult for me to listen from my room, and the only thing I managed to pick up on was my mother trying to excuse her behavior. When she was in the wrong, however, that strategy was never successful, and she ended up saying something along the lines of, "Fine. In the event that she did, in fact, steal the money, you are obligated to repay it because she has already spent it." On the other hand, my mother yelled at me while she threw open my door. "You little snitch, I can't believe you blew the whistle on me. You couldn't just let a little money slip through your fingers after everything I do for you." My response: "So you admit that my sister took it then?" A sneering mother says, "You know what? It makes no difference to me. More money is required by girls than by boys. There is no reason why you shouldn't just hand it over to her." Simply said, it wasn't even that much. "It wasn't just a little money, and you ought to know that," I said. In spite of the fact that she took $100, I would still want it back even if it was only $1. If someone stole from your purse, you would not want it to happen to you. The same thing would happen if my sister stole from me. She is guilty, as you are aware. One way or another, I want that money backdated. She did nothing while I put great effort on it. Mom, my darling has no responsibilities. She is a princess and ought to be treated accordingly. Me? That isn't what bothers me. She may go be a princess away from my possessions and away from me. Mom, that's it, you tiny expletive. I'm going to knock your ass. Me, standing up and staring her eye to eye. As I was already as tall as her at 14 and pretty strong from all the outdoor work I was doing. Go ahead and try it. Since I did nothing wrong, I won't let you. My mother froze in position for a second, then let out a loud "ray" and swung her arm to try and knock something off my dresser. But she swung too low and struck the dresser itself, which I assume truly hurt. She was giving me a terrible face as she grasped her hand to try and hold in the agony. Her teeth were snarling. She simply turned around then and left. When she didn't way was to go to her wine fridge and proceed to get drunk. I heard her making a racket, yelling and smashing the wall as she went down the hall, down the stairs, into the kitchen doing her regular routine when she didn't way was denied. From her bedroom door, my sister was watching me. She glanced at me scared and ran back inside her room slamming the door. Mom was fast changing. She was her ace in the hole for getting away with the horrors she did to me. My dad came home from work a few hours later and marched my sister into my room to see me. She admitted to pilfering from me, then informed me I was not grounded. Sis refused to even look at me the entire time she was being ordered to apologize, and she did so in the most quiet and squeaky voice at first, until my dad regularly told her to speak up till she was almost screaming it. Dad then handed me a $100 cash to cover what my sister stole and mentioned she was grounded for a week. The pilfered money will show up from her stipend. She began crying and called Dad horrible, then dashed to her room. Ignoring all of us, my mother merely sat on the rear patio intoxicated on her preferred wine. She never apologized to me and even behaved as though the whole incident never took place. My sister still received her next allowance as well, but at that time my mother gave it to her rather than my dad. On my dad's day off from work a few days later, we visited a nearby retailer where he purchased a combination safe to deposit my money and other little items in. We omitted telling my mother or sister I had it. It was set for a 4-digit code. To the best of memory, I used 4,962 back then. After locking the safe and emptying all of my money into it, I stored it at the rear of my closet. A few weeks passed, and one day after returning from mowing some neighbors, I discovered my room had been rifled. To let her know what sis did to my room, I gave my mother a call. Mom said, "My baby didn't do this." "Well then, did you?" I said. "Mom, no." "Me? Well, it could only have been one of you. No one else was here and this room was clean when I left." Mom clearly upset at getting caught by reason. "Fine, but if she did, then so what? You had it coming from not being kinder to her anyhow." She then turned to dash off. I phoned my dad once more and left another note explaining what transpired on his work answering machine. I then went to tell my sister I knew she was the one who tore apart my room. I said she couldn't get to my money anymore since I had locked it up in a safe before she could even try to respond to me. She then had an awful fit and naturally, nasty mama bear came running to save her. My sister kept wailing in her room for the next 20 minutes while I reiterated that sis couldn't get at my money anymore and returned to clean her room. Only thrown and spread around. Nothing was truly missing or ruined. I gathered everything and restored it exactly how it was. Still, it was the most arrogant I had ever felt as I cleaned my room. The next day though, I discovered it ripped once more, and this time my window was damaged too. Not able to get the safe open, sis had thrown it out the window. I immediately contacted my father, and when my parents returned from work, my sister came clean about having done it, as if she were glad of herself. Saying I shouldn't have received the safe in the first place, my mother really tried to side with her. But my dad chewed her up and stated he got it from me since he was sick and tired of her stealing from me. My dad has to pay me back each time she pilfers money from me and spends it since my mother never would. My dad got me a lock for my door and even a combination key lock box with the key to my room next to the door. We had to replace the complete window for my room. After shattering my window, my sister ground herself for a month and spent that whole time pining in her room. Mom always let Dad go back to do what she wanted, like watching TV or playing video games, whenever he was home till he left work. Knowing that my sister and mother would have gone out of their way to make me more miserable, I decided not to say anything. Once her month-long grounding ended, my sister started pestering me for money each time she spent all of her stipend. She never saved anything, hence I just pointed out to her that she would never pay it back. To be honest, I created an IOU to see whether she would really sign it before Dad. She ripped the paper in half later and went crying to Mom once more over my rudeness. Mom and she would try to make me cough up the money for her, but I would remind her what Dad would do. Thus, if my sister needed any more money, it wouldn't come from me. My mom then actively sought to send me to military school, but Dad objected. Also, for anyone wondering why my dad didn't simply assist me create a savings account back then, I honestly don't know. Saving it in cash seems like the way we handled things. Update. I once made my mother walk straight into my door. My sister had thrown my safe through my bedroom window, so shortly after my dad provided me a safe for my money, he also got me a deadbolt lock for my door with a wall-mounted lockbox requiring a code to access the key. Together, we installed the lock and lockbox while my sister and mother were not home. My sister came back and initially walked past my room. I watched her glance at the lock, then dashed to get Mom. Coming thundering down the stairs to meet my dad and me was both of them. What I recall is the following paraphrased. Mom says, pointing and snapping a few times, "What the hell is that?" Father, "A door lock." Mom, "I know what the expletive thing is. Why is it in there?" Dad, "Because you never see fit to reprimand or stop our daughter from taking from Kegel or ransking his room. The lock stays so going forward." Mom, "This is my house and he is just 14. His door cannot have a lock." Dad said, "No, this is our house. Last I checked though, I paid most of the expenses including the mortgage. You seldom pay anything, and I'm tired of you giving our daughter such preference that Kegel suffers constantly." Mom says, "Well then, I demand you tell me the code for the lockbox at least." Deadpan staring Dad, "I'm not doing that because you've shown I can't trust you anymore." Mom then blasted her top and rushed down the steps. My sister merely stood there pouting and then made slow walk into her room. With the new lock, things were good. It became second nature to me to lock it each time I left my bedroom. Many times when I entered the code to obtain the key, I spotted my sister and mother staring at me, but I always made sure to conceal their line of sight using my hand or body. Though they hated that, there was nothing they could do about it. One day late in the month, my sister came begging me for $40 to get a video game she absolutely desired. Me, "Why do you keep asking for money when you and I both know you'll never pay it back?" Sis, "I swear, I'll pay it back." Me, "You won't? You know you would much prefer spend all of your allowance than pay me back. You spend everything you have then some each month. That's what you do always." Sis, No, I do not." "Well then, how about we test that?" I ask. Always have a witness for contracts, folks. I then went into my room, acquired a piece of paper and a pen, handwrote an IOU contract stating Sis would pay me back the $40 upon receiving her monthly stipend, and Dad would co-sign the IOU. After reading the paper, S began sniffling. She ripped it in half and then ran screaming to Mom once more, like she did every single time her way was denied. "Mom!" Sis, bowing, sobbing. "Mom, what is it, darling small prince? What then did Kegel do?" Me, I asked her to sign an IOU fronting Dad as she wanted to borrow money. She then started to freckle. "Mom, and why would you pursue that? She merely sought a small loan." Me, "Would you sign the IOU also to make sure she pays the money back?" Mom says, "You little expletive. I am not required to sign anything, now only loan her the money." Me, "Not without a signed IOU." Mom stood up, arm out as if about to strike me, then pulled back. "Mom, you have to have a paper trail for everything. You're just like your father. I love. I'd say it's a good thing I'm just like Dad because it's far better than being just like Sis is, because you never do anything good." Me, beginning to stroll up the stairs to my room at this point. Mom asked, "What was that, you little expletive?" Just as I entered my bedroom and locked the door, she started hurrying up the stairs. Back then, my mother used to yell at me by throwing open my bedroom door. She opened the in one sweeping stroke, lunging her body forward. But at this point I had only had the lock on my door for a brief while, so she wasn't used to it yet. She tried to throw open my door and smashed rather loudly directly into the deadbolt after I shut it. Then I heard her slump to the ground and begin to produce agonizing cries. She had very hard banged her body and face against the door. Her lip was plump and her forehead developed a bump from this old-fashioned solid wood door. She was spread out on the floor pounding her fist when I opened the door. Mom exclaimed, "You did this to me, you little expletive." Me, "You did it to yourself." Mom, "You are anchored. Get away from my sight." I then called Dad and he simply grumbled over the phone over the entire matter. He stated I wasn't grounded, but I was still in huge trouble for goading her and to let him handle her when he got home. That was about it. Dad gave me a harsh lecture at the end, coupled with extra housework and a cut in my stipend that month. Every time Sis begged for money following that day, I asked her to sign an IOU. She truly did object to that. Update 2. It blew up in her face when my mother tried to have me sent to military school and produced my dad's signature. When I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more cautious that if she tried to harm me it would end very poorly for her. The final time, she mainly yelled at me. She never laid a finger on me ever more until years later, when she wanted my house. I gave it no thought and carried on with my regular schedule of classes and odd work. Right around my 15th birthday, my dad gave me an engine kit for my bike to get around town. I would be better off saving for a car than a scooter, he advised, and this would help now. I stayed saving for a car and finally agreed with his reasoning. A few days later, though, I came over a military academy leaflet while clearing grass off the rear patio after mowing the yard. It was on the floor under a chair close to where my mother preferred to sit and sip wine. I waited until my dad arrived home to show him what I had discovered. I felt she was planning some sort of mad scheme. He went to see my mom with the booklet and asked her about it since he was somewhat irate but didn't jump to judgments. Dad said, "Honey, what's this?" Mom becomes white upon seeing the leaflet. "Nothing." I had never seen it before. "Dad, exactly? You know I wouldn't let you send Kegel to military school if you intended to try to send him." Mom broke her front at that and exclaimed, "He has to learn some discipline. He locks his door often, hence I am unable to even spank him anymore as he is too big. This is the only means I have left to chastise him for being a disobedient brat." "Dad, Kegel stood up to you for your silly favoritism and did nothing wrong. Given you and the way you treat her and let her get away with stealing from her brother, our daughter is the brat if anything. And as far as I'm concerned, this conversation about sending Kegel to military school is closed. Should you try to send him, then help me. I will bring the hammer down on you whatever method I can." "Mom, well, I guess this entire family is just going to take away what little power I have left in this house then. Should I have nothing, I could as well be nothing. Dad, you and I both know you would much choose Keel over being nothing. Cut back on your theatrical behavior. Now a guy with his own money, Kegel is growing up." Mom left the room angrily then. Before school, the next morning, I watched her desperately attempting to fit something into the kitchen garbage can. I dug out what she was trying to hide while waiting for her to head out for work. She filled out the military school application totally in her hand. On it, both parents or legal guardians had to sign. The paper included 2 signatures. I understood Mom's, but the other seemed to be a poor attempt to copy Dad's. His sleek and sophisticated signature was something he took great satisfaction in. There's no way my mother could replicate it without seeming like fraud. She probably understood it once she was confronted and gave up attempting to send me away. Later I showed my dad the papers and kept them. Though he was furious, he let it go knowing she had done it already. Still, he filed the paperwork right in case. A few more months later, word leaked out that my mother was seeing an old high school ex-boyfriend. My dad filed for divorce. That was his last straw. Months later, after he acquired another house, I moved in with him. Pulling out the military school records my mom had created with his signature, he accelerated the divorce rather fast. And it wasn't only that. He also had evidence she created his signature on at least 1 credit card application and one other thing I don't remember, which made Mom worry about being arrested for fraud. She agreed to most of his requirements, so they proceeded really quickly through court. Dad didn't want the house, so Mom bought it. Nevertheless, she also insisted on alimony and child support since my sister, predictably, decided to remain living with her. For a decade of monthly payments, the judge granted my mother child support and a minimal alimony award. Alimony essentially paid my sister's allowance anyhow. Mom was really irate about that and vowed to bring him back to court, but for years he held the falsified signatures over her head to calm her. My sister threw out her mouth at me and smugly claimed Mom informed her she was a princess and the more deserved sibling, so explaining the reason I was leaving the house. Not caring anymore, I merely shook my head and advised her to consider what she wants. Then I went out the door, at last as free as a bird. My connection with my sister, who paid once weekly visits to Dad's residence, deteriorated until at last we stopped communicating completely for years. Mom's residence hardly appealed to me. She essentially turned my former room into a home office anyway. Arrogant boss fires expert leading to pound 800K project disaster. Sweet revenge unfolds, but the story ends in tragedy. Who am I? Do you know? It backfires on an egotistical manager when an $800,000 project goes off course because he sacked an invaluable staff member. First of all, this never happened to me. I was with the individual when they got a call concerning this problem. Then he walked me through it all. He is not on Reddit, hence I am sharing it. It is valuable. Every name has been modified to guard corporate and personal identities. The plot depends much on listed structures. There is a mechanism in place in the UK for maintaining historic and significant constructions. A building deemed historically significant is referred to as a listed building. The guidelines for its evolution, preservation, and enhancement are rather rigorous. I have to be obscure about the labor involved. Else, it would be too simple to name the people engaged. David, a buddy of mine, is quite specialized in a very small field of building. Using a very ancient building technique not used for several millennia, he fixes and renovates buildings. His whole output focuses on listed buildings and conservation projects. Work needed on a Grade 1 listed property. ACC Limited, the major contractor, was handling the building generally. There is quite specific study on one aspect. The architect provided a list of suitable candidates as the contractor management knew no one who had done it. The contractors selected my friend since he was most available early on. 5 days into the project, the major contractor, ACC Limited, arrived on site. David's words? He was a boisterous gobshite throwing his weight about. David ignored him while he was merely working. One of his carpenters was directed by the boisterous gobshite to make him coffee. The carpenter vanished. The noisy gobshite kept prowling and grumbling about delays costing him a lot of money. The boisterous gobshite asked my pal a question 15 minutes after the carpenter vanished. "Where's that chippy with my coffee?" asked a noisy gobshite. "Chippy = carpenter. Chippy = carpenter." "David, I'm not clear." "Go and find out," a noisy gobshite says. "David, I'm only here for this job," gesturing at the walls. "I work for ACC Limited, not for you." Noisy gobshite. "It makes no difference if you're an employee or a subcontractor. You still are working for me. Now go and locate my coffee." "David, first of all, I find it offensive to be spoken to like manners. Second, my contract with you is to do these walls, nothing else. I most definitely am not a gopher." Noisy gobshite. "Oh, do you not value being spoken to in such a manner? For which subcontractor do you now work?" "David, none. I run my business alone, just me." Noisy gobshite. "A day laborer. And you have the guts to address me in such a manner? Do you know my name?" "David, sure." "Well, you're fired," a noisy gobshite says. "Get out of the premises right away." David says, "Okay." "Just get off the site," says a noisy gobshite. David grabbed out his phone and started recording. "David, okay, I'll leave. Just want evidence you advised me to leave." Grabbing David's hand containing the phone, a noisy gobshite yelled into the phone, "Get off the site, you idiot," a noisy gobshite says. "You're let off. I'll have you thrown out if you're still here in 10 minutes. David, cool, not problematic. He took up his gear and left. The contractor's site manager passed him, ironically with a coffee for the boss, as he was leaving and smiled. Site manager. "Dave, you're leaving early?" "Bloody part-time kidding." "David, no, your boss just sacked me. We have signed out our contract. Apologies, friend." The site manager said, No, allow me to arrange things here. Please wait, kindly." David left the site. Knowing something the boisterous gobshite lacked, the site manager was losing his head. In the UK, just 7 persons are certified to handle the task. Every one of them had a waiting list. David had been the only one accessible. 12 missed calls by the time he arrived home. That was Thursday, 2 working days absent so far. He claimed he would go back only if he was paid for the extra days and personally apologized to the employer. I met my friend as he was answering a call from the site manager, stating the boss apologies but is out of the country, so cannot apologize personally. David also informed me he warned the other specialist over the phone, but they had all been contacted on Friday asking to be assigned work. Nobody picked up the work. They were all booked full. To warn him, David also called the architect. Under such circumstances, some dishonest builders attempt to falsify the work and bodge the job. David is going to keep his guns. Money for all missing days plus a face-to-face apologies. He is positive he will grasp it. I mentioned I would pay anything to see the in-person apologies. Update 1. The site manager called to inform David he was advised by the noisy gobshite to threaten legal action should David fail to complete his work. The site manager became really ashamed and apologetic. David reminded him he left and had documentation proving he was let go. The site manager called once more to inform the noisy gobshite will be personally apologizing on Friday. Could David begin tomorrow? David said no. Following the legal action threat, the criteria are different. Before work starts, a face-to-face apology. Additional compensation for lost days. Paying the whole contract value up front before work starts. All of this has to happen on Thursday. He can start today and still expect to finish before his next reservation. Should he work weekends as well, he has just enough time. I questioned him about why he isn't charging the man who is such a wanker a hefty extra fee. He remarked, "It's not the done thing to take advantage of businesses under time constraints. It looks bad. One of my pals apparently is a guy from the 18th century. Edit. When David mentioned just 7 others do this work, I misinterpreted him. He intended 7 different companies distinct from his own. Since they are small companies, he argues it is most likely just about 20 persons capable of doing it. Still a limited amount, although not as humorously tiny as 7. I apologize for misled all of you regarding the count. Update 2. Sadly, an apology appears unlikely. David has found that the site manager was sacked for not alerting the noisy gobshite of the circumstances earlier. David told the operations director for ACC Limited, the second noisy gobshite, that he would not be returning to the position, so an apology is not needed. Apologizing for everything, the operations director promised to very liberally renegotiate the money. David informed him he had only thought about returning to the position as a personal courtesy to the original site manager. He feels no need to go back as he is not there. The operations director indicated he will contact David but omitted any explanation. Why he didn't say, "Give him his job back, or I won't come back," I wondered. David remarked the boisterous gobshite is too weak and petty to be guided by a craftsman. It will have to be the concept of the company for the site manager returning. They won't bring him back if I order them to. David thinks it's difficult to obtain a job at 61 since the site manager is excellent at his work but only 4 years from retirement. I have decided that David appeals to me even more than 3 days before. 3 updates. It is 2 in the morning here. We just came out of the bar. David answered a call from the dismissed site manager while we were out. David reported the circumstances to the architect this afternoon. The architect got in touch with the terminated site manager to let him know about a company needing a site manager. Just before 9 p.m., the dismissed site manager called David. I had to sit through the one-sided phone call. I had to have looked like I had a house full of sparrows, childishly thrilled. Then David filled in for me. The site manager rang to thank him and find out his preferred drink so he might bring him a bottle. He is seeing them on Friday even though he does not yet have the new job. The architect is hopeful since apparently his advice has some weight. David first rejected. David, I didn't not get you a job. The architect done. Site manager. But you told the architect I had been sacked because of you, therefore you set all this in motion. I never have to deal with that annoying pillock ever once again. David left no clear identification for the irritable pillock. We will have to conjecture. David mentioned his drink is Cardhu Gold Reserve. He declared he would only take a bottle if A. the site manager lands the new position. B. should the site manager visit and sip the Cardhu with David. The whiskey consumption does not seem to include the attractive scribe who painstakingly and time-consumingly skillfully recorded this narrative down on Reddit. David elegantly said, "Piss off, knobhead, you can get your own drink." Except that nobody gets to see the tosspot noisy gobshite eat crow when he has to apologize. All excellent news ideally. I had great anticipation about that. David and the sacked site manager know each other outside of the office. Though 2 separate clubs, they are members of charitable organizations in the same location and cooperate extensively. David is Roundtable, whereas the site manager belongs to the Rotary Club. Though you never know, I doubt he is a knight. David was contacted by the operations director of ACC Limited to propose that they kindly renegotiate the money by bringing the site manager back. They have missed the boat, David says. He cannot finish the work on his own before beginning his next employment. Should all go without a hitch, there is an absolute minimum of 11 days labor left. David's next employment begins on November 4th. Assuming he works weekends, there are 10 days left. Last minute. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when the noisy gobshite is informed. Many people often ask, what does David do? If I said what it would be quite identifying. I could as well tell you his actual name and address. Apologize. There are extremely few of them since it takes 5 years to become just competent and at least 9 years to be a master artisan. At least one master present is needed for the jobs done. Update 4. Bad news. The site manager who was sacked did not land the other position. He met the new company, but they are not extending an invitation to him. The explanations are not obvious. David is seeing him Sunday to go over it. Though David is not at blame, I can sense he feels guilty about it. The site manager claims he will act regarding unjust firing. Though I imagine this would be a win-win-win, I suppose life isn't like that. News about the sacked site manager. The current state of affairs is not as dire as first assumed. We misinterpreted what transpired on Friday. David chatted with him yesterday. That aspect is accurate. The employer he visited on Friday is not hiring him in the usual manner. On a distribution center build, they have, however, presented him with a fixed-term contract spanning 18 months. Though not ideal, on the plus side it pays somewhat more than ACC. Though just 18 months, it is better than nothing. Should another project surface, the new business also has the option to extend the contract. David has heard that someone Bulgarian is visiting to cover for the work. David was grinning when he informed me. He believes he understands exactly what will happen. Some 19th century Sophian structures feature a comparable but different method that was used. David believes the man will apply such an approach. Though two extremely crucial elements are different, it looks comparable. David has opted to hold off. David is going to advise the client and the planning department to verify the two components. He intends to allow the Bulgarian to finish the job and get paid. The Bulgarian will have used the incorrect tools unless he is familiar with the English approach from the 17th century. It would mean pulling it apart and beginning over. They treat this kind of work quite rigorously. Though I hardly desire this, I truly hope this comes true. I'm a minor dude. More info. Many people are wondering when David would find out whether the Bulgarian performed the work as expected. Given that there are few vendors of one of the materials, David might know really quickly. Should the Bulgarian get in touch, David will be informed. David said, "It's a tiny incestuous part of the industry, and they gossip like old women." Correction. Like older women, we all gossip. David is leaving it alone till told the work is done and the Bulgarian is paid if he does not visit there. He wants not to jeopardize the man's money. David said, "I don't want the Bulgarian to drag his arse over here and go home empty-handed just because I can't wait to drop silly bollocks. The man has a living to support him. I'm going to wait." Silly bollocks is the same person as noisy gobshite, just in case of uncertainty. Unless he works weekends, the Bulgarian should finish his job in 3 weeks. David will know when the work is done as he knows several people at ACC head office and several on site. I must thus wait on my hands for 3 to 4 weeks and appear to be a non-excited 7-year-old girl not complaining about Christmas approaching. Update 5. According to David, the Bulgarian got right to it and began working. Materials have been delivered, but from an ordinary building supplier. Though they sell it in Bulgaria, the items he requires for the work are too heavy for him to carry with him. He hasn't asked for it from the UK provider. 3. But only one has enough for this work since David brought it in for her. He is therefore not using the correct materials unless he is arriving by road and ferry. Though he was not bothered by raucous gobshite, David would not let it go unrecorded. He is a purist in terms of historical accuracy and truly enjoys maintaining all the structures he works on. I therefore have to hold my water for 3 to 4 weeks. David claims he might finish earlier if he uses more contemporary materials. If you stay in the 17th century, 3 weeks is the period. About this work, I have become such a weirdo. David knew I was after information after I phoned him earlier under cover of pretext. "Do you want me to fit a body cam so you can watch and hear everything as it happens?" David asked me. I answered, "That would be great if it would not be too much trouble and you could link me into your phone calls." Laughing, David said, "You knob cheese, is it okay if I cover the lens when I'm shagging my wife?" Personal Ollie, I don't do those two things at the same time, but whatever floats your boat, I said. David, you are telling me you do them separately. Me, right after she washed all the garbage off the sheets after doing you. A few of us are finicky. David said, "Piss off, you're an uptight clean freak." Hangs. Not farewell, not see you shortly. English behavior is not what it once was. Though I realize it doesn't look like it, really I do have a life. I never would have thought I would be typing Update 6 when I originally started working on this. Update 6 Many news stories. 2 weeks ago the Bulgarian completed his work and returned home. Those who met Stefan the Bulgarian said he was a decent man and a really diligent worker. He worked weekends and 12-hour days to help to offset the expenses of living in the UK. David is glad he waited until Stefan paid before he reported the work, knowing what he discovered about Stefan. David already felt rather certain Stefan was not performing as required. None of the 3 companies he checked, the sole UK suppliers of the most unusual substance involved in the job, said they had an order for the site. Stefan might have imported it, of course, but nobody on site had seen an international material order. As scheduled, David thus made calls to the client, the architect, the local authority planning department, and Historic England. He waited for them to investigate after outlining his worries in the simplest, least invasive manner possible. Though it just took a few days, I can really say that I have never been that nervous or committed in anything unrelated to my pissing business. The architect produced the first report on incorrect materials and technique applied. Not the English one demanded. He had applied a Bulgarian technique from the 19th century rather than the 17th. The architect was really agitated. David Avid stated this phone call was blue, but he had never heard the architect using foul words before. The architect apparently termed the boisterous gobshite, ignorant cockwomble. David defined a womble for me. I knew nothing. Approach is welcome. Not wanting people to believe this was anything to do with him, the architect said he was going to get in touch with the local authorities. Most of the remainder came to David's second or third hand. He knows some of the staff from ACC. I wanted to know whether it was challenging to get them to tell him anything. He mentioned they lacked the quick adequate phone pickup ability. The location was visited and the work examined by the local government planning officials. They informed the contractor that the work had to be cleared and corrected since it was totally improper. Then it became fascinating. Looking about the property, the inspectors discovered a problem. It would be too simple to pinpoint the buildings involved, hence I cannot be exact about this. The builder had wrecked some of the structure. Though it was not very significant, there was an internal feature included into the roof construction. Although they were not led to, they removed it and replaced it with a far superior modern support. The project manager, the new site manager, or staff member neither understood the significance. Who ordered it to be replaced with a cheap, quick alternative rather than the slow, expensive, rebuilt option? Of course, it was noisy gobshite. Destroying anything on this kind of property is illegal, jail sentence type of crime. It's a huge fine even if they avoid jail. Everyone in that company is thus pointing fingers at one another and claiming no accountability right now. According to Noisy Gobshite, he did not direct the internal roof structural components to be removed. The project manager has email proving he did. The client asked all of the contractor's employees off the site on Tuesday, the 19th. They are currently looking over everything. They're most definitely firing the contractor. They have written guidelines for bids from fresh contractors. They will also sue the contractor for the expenses of undoing and fixing all they have done improperly. The architect's projection came at £800,000. The local government planning department wrote to the contractor detailing their mistakes and alerting them of their intentions for inspection and the likelihood of prosecution. On the day the letter arrived, Noisy Gobshite vanished to the lawyers, claims the staff. Within an hour, David received 3 calls from 3 separate ACC phones as word of the letter spread around the workforce. Now we are awaiting a few things. 1. The client's checkup. Should that prove ACC has damaged the site, the client is entitled to terminate the contractor. ACC has a huge repair debt and does not get paid. 2. Local authority inspections conducted by conservationists. Should they have destroyed elements of the property, the local government will punish ACC as a company and the individual responsible. David is rather disappointed since it is impossible to rebuild the internal framework lost. That was sitting there performing its job for 400 years until that gist stain enters the picture, he said. It goes then, and that is it, never again. He comes across as really depressed. I'm guessing Noisy Gobshite is yearning he had his own coffee that day last month. Edit, the letter to ACC, not their actual name, did not threaten a prosecution. It simply made them aware of the intention of the planning department to send a professional to check the construction and, more especially, the changed area. Apparently, should prosecution take place, it takes eternity. My real apologies for misleading all of you. Like everyone else, I was overly eager to grab my pitchfork and start believing the worst. Wishful thinking mixed with Chinese whispers meant that the story was far more serious and advanced by the time it reached David. Though it's more likely to be in 6 months than in 6 days, Noisy Gobshite may well be prosecuted. Since I started, that represents the second correction. I promise to try to be a little more deliberate on next revisions. My error, not David's. David cautioned me that not everything that comes in your ears has to flow directly out of your tongue. You're very eager to feed the masses. Although they might believe you are currently farting rainbows, if you make a bollocks of the data, this won't last. Like always, he is correct. As uncomfortably customary. Information asked. A few have inquired about the fate of the sacked original site manager, but I wasn't sure until now. We met in the pub. David, the site manager, 2 others also. Subject to fidelity insurance checks, he most certainly has the new job. His starting date is February 9th. ACC paid him off in place of notice. Firing is done according to convention. They paid him just over 3.5 months' wages in one lump as his contract provided 3 months' notice and he was due 12 holiday/6/vacation days. He also gets to retain the car till March. I was shaking like a dog when he fired me, he added, but the wife reminded me that I could take my pension early and how much I hate that company, especially that dodgy pillage. I stopped worrying when the architect contacted me about the distribution center job. He started the new work on a somewhat better pay after landing it. The main drawback is that the employment is just guaranteed for 18 months. Although it's not certain, there's a great chance the organization will retain him following that if they have work. He first intended to bring Noisy Gobshite to an industrial tribunal for unjust dismissal. Now he won't, since he won't suffer financially. Obviously, I'm glad I'm not losing money, he remarked, but I was looking forward to beating that Watson in court. He is building a better sleigh and several reindeer with the additional time right now. Certainly, a sleigh. It's on the rear of a truck. Father Christmas is on the sleigh performing Christmas carols at window-rattling volume, gathering money for charity while his company strolls the area decked as elves and snowmen. I have oftentimes been pulled into it. He brought David the promised whiskey. David advised he shouldn't, but the site manager remarked, "Why, Yorkshire men keep their word, even to a shower of soft shandy-sipping southerners like Ulan. Besides, I'm not risking breaking this lucky streak." Even the alcohol came at half price. Simultaneously pointing at him, David and I said, "A real Yorkshireman." For the uninitiated, Yorkshire residents are known for two things: highly straightforward communication and financial restraint. We left the pub after ridiculing him for implying that I was a southerner and headed to the garage of the site manager so we could sip the whiskey and appreciate his sleigh building work. Would they send me some freebies if I told you all how great Cardew Gold Reserve tastes? Born close to Carnarvon, Saeeglf, I'm Welsh and am sobbing in Bith, hence you have most likely seen some awful grammar. I'm full of whiskey, so right now I'm debating. It is past my bedtime. 1 a.m. Bye for now. Update 7. I believe there might be some karmic justice en route. Interviews under control have been conducted with Noisy Gobshite. It indicates they are ready for the possibility rather than that they are absolutely suing him. They will also do so with the sacked site manager next week. They also followed the same process with the project manager. The site manager is sure he has nothing to concern about. He was sacked, hence the decision was taken to remove the pieces of roof support. He added he was sure the Noisy Gobshite would have sought to assign culpability to a site manager if he had been present at the time of the illegal modification. He said, "That cowardly slope-shouldered turd would have shot all over me to save his own skin." Fortunately, the project manager has evidence in the form of an email proving Noisy Gobshite ordered the task. Noisy Gobshite sought to convince him not to forward it on to the local authority planning department. He threatened him when that didn't work. That backfired when the project manager told the investigators that Noisy Gobshite instructed him to delete the email in addition to neglecting the risks. My buddy, a lawyer, informs me that destroying evidence and meddling with a witness are crimes in of themselves. Noisy Gobshite will not stop excavating a deeper hole. If he gets away without facing legal repercussions, I will be really let down. He is nevertheless clearly in pain. The major story of the week? Noisy Gobshite has been let off. After learning from no less than 4 separate ACC workers, David announced it yesterday, Saturday. They eagerly wanted to tell him, he said. Then the discussion followed this pattern. Me? How is that feasible? How does the owner find himself let off? Did he stroll up to a mirror and declare, "You're as much use as Anne Frank's drum kit, you're fired"? David? Nope. You know he inherited the company from his uncle and dad. Me? Exactly. David said, "You know his brother and cousin own a slice each." Me? Anyway. David? They fired him since their combined share is over 50%. Louise, the accounts manager, told me they are pissing their pants. As long as the money came in, they were content to leave Noisy Gobshites in charge, but today their golden goose seems very sick. Losing this contract and the fees and penalties scares them since it will close the company. They therefore ask the customer owner to bring ACC back to complete the deal. Part of that is persuading the building owner that Noisy Gobshite has nothing bearing on the business. Clearly, they are putting Noisy Gobshite beneath the bus. According to Louise, a Noisy Gobshite fired at him with screaming and violent threats. He required escort off the property. He has been phoning staff members, posing queries, and acts shocked when individuals refuse to assist him. Louise claims he truly wants to be loyal to him and thinks the staff like him. The man is in cloud cuckoo land, she declared. Me? He will be really offended. I wish I could have seen the face of Numpty as it was developing. David says, "It's nothing that the Scrot doesn't deserve. I promised the person who told me I wouldn't tell anyone yet, hence there is another, but I can't tell you about it." Me? You tease. What relevance does it have? David. It's significant. Transformational for the theme in life. Me? I wish I could tell you. It nearly gave me a hard-on. Me? Thing hell, it must be big if it can get that ugly appending to do anything except hang there like the last chicken in the shop. David, what a drama this is. She believes I should share with her this confidentially anything I learned. Given our marriage, she expects me to be able to tell her everything. I said it's not something I keep secret. Though I had hoped I would get, I appreciate you have integrity, dear husband. No. Mrs. here is enraged since she believes I'm a knobhead. Louise's employment title and name have been changed to defend the innocent. I don't want any of you holding your breath. It looks like it will be a few months before he can provide me with this fantastic news. The building owner, client has completed their inspection. 2 portions are unacceptable, the damaged section and the one David ought to have completed but Stefan did instead. They are rather unhappy. Usually, the local government believes it's the owner cutting corners when listed structures are harmed. In this instance, though, the owner is an austere ancient institution committed to maintaining significant structures. They didn't enjoy having to establish they had nothing to do with the building's damage as they are not used to being accused of anything dubious. David stated it appears they have written off ACC since they have made a type of tendering request to multiple other firms specialized in conservation. Then he spewed a bunch of jargon I neither knew or recall. Me, they have asked a few firms to quote a price for the job in simple English. David says, that's a very simplified way of describing it, but I don't have the time or the crayons to explain it to you. Me, okay, let us say they are requesting job-related prices. Condescending, hence I was anticipating this tale would develop to a crescendo with noisy gobshites suffering something terrible. But it's just sort of faded with a whimper while we wait to find out what legal action will be pursued. Real life moves slowly, quite inconveniently. January 21, 2020. Hi there, this is Mark's wife. The moron requested me to apologize to the internet for his silence. On January 7th he was injured in an automobile accident. Though he won't be online for a little, we are confident he will fully recover. I explained it's only Reddit, but he's a compulsive freak about not disappointing others. I thus assured them I will include Reddit in the list. Here I am, informing all the folks he doesn't know why he hasn't finished imparting something they most likely aren't reading anyhow. March 2nd, 2020. Hello Mark, once more his wife. Direct messages numbered more than 200. I appreciate all of your remarks as well as your wishing of him well. I have read them all to him. I'll address the 3 most often asked questions. Mark's situation changed what? A big lorry drove straight into the rear of him while he was still stationary in his automobile about to exit the freeway. Between that lorry and the lorry ahead of Mark, his automobile was destroyed. Among his multiple shattered bones are nose, left orbital and cheekbone, left radius and ulna, forearm, left hand, right tibia and fibula, lower leg, and 4 ribs, one of which pierced his left lung. His left eye's center vision is somewhat damaged, however we hope this is transient. He needs more surgery since he has some tendon damage in his right hand and has 112 stitches overall. Though he looks like a wreck, he might heal free from any serious damage. If it were me, I wouldn't cope, but for as long as I've known him, he has always been as hard as nails. I went to pieces when I initially arrived at the hospital and he was lying there covered in blood, cables, and tubes and couldn't talk properly. In minutes, he had me giggling. He has always been really adept at knowing the appropriate response. Not being able to use his hands is the thing most bothering him right now. When ought he to change the narrative? It might take some time. Though I could ask the guy David contacted for an update, I most certainly cannot tell a narrative like Mark can. I'm obviously biased, but Mark seems to be the most entertaining man I have ever met. I start to laugh so much I cannot breathe as he and David get going. I have advised him to temporarily forget about everything but getting well. If it starts to disturb him though, I've told him I'll do some secretary role-playing and he may write the narrative to me. He will finish it. He always finishes what he starts on. I wish my self-discipline was 100th that of his. A few have inquired whether they might give him money, cards, or gifts to cover missed income or medical expenditures. Thank you so much for offering, but it's not necessary. As we live in the UK, fortunately healthcare is free. He wants none of anyone's money. There's a long-standing charity we have sponsored called Macmillan Cancer Support if anyone feels driven to do something. At last update, knowing who I am would help you. The David against boisterous gobshite narrative. The 22nd of May 2020. Slough mainly grunted. This username belonged to Mark, my spouse. He penned the narrative on his friend David and a company owner he referred to as noisy gobshite. Up until he was in a January vehicle accident, Mark had been updating the narrative. He requested me then to let everyone know he was hurt and to update the narrative after he recovered. Mark sadly died barely over a week after my previous comment. Everyone thought he was healing, but he passed out and died extremely rapidly without warning. Although the team did all they could to save him, his aorta had burst. They claimed it is not unusual in auto collisions and had most likely been damaged during the accident. Although I'm sorry I didn't update this earlier, to be honest I totally neglected this page. I discovered how many people were waiting for Mark to wrap up the narrative only after I returned to go over Mark's words once more. Though I'm not sure how many people will view this update, would you kindly forward this news to everyone you know who was waiting for Mark to respond? Many thanks. I appreciate the hundreds of people that posted get well notes for Mark. I'm sorry I ignored you all for so long. But for the past 3 months I've been bewildered. Mark would have chastised me and most certainly objected to my leaving everyone in uncertainty. Many thanks to the persons who sent Macmillan cancer support money. Though it seems odd to have money given in the name of mostly Gruntled. At last, I want to thank the moderators, especially /u/Marari01, for guiding me and outlining how I might notify everyone. Monday, May 24th, 2020. For the wonderful messages and virtual hugs I have seen over the past day, I am most grateful. For hours I have shed tears. One finds it difficult to define what good sobbing is when one loses someone. Those who have lost a loved one will most likely relate. Most of today has been good tears thanks to your postings and comments. Your thoughts have helped me to consider all of Mark's amazing traits and all the reasons I so much loved him. I began working on the update, then gave up around 8 times before mustering some fortitude. I am rather happy I did it. I appreciate once more the final small push I required from the moderator /u/Marari01. It also helps me understand that I wish to undertake one more activity Mark would have liked. He consistently brought his starting work to completion. I will find out what has happened by talking to his buddies. I'll try to get myself current with everyone's outcomes. I know some of it already. I tell you ahead of time, it will be merely the facts, not like Mark's writing. Though I lack Mark's natural storytelling ability, the comments clearly indicate that many people were hoping for a resolution. The bare facts will have to be sufficient, please forgive. I'm going to talk to David, the guy he contacted. This year he has been a total rock for me. With luck, he will be able to cover all. As soon as I can, I'll input the change. I greatly appreciate it all. You are unaware of the extent this has benefited. Friday, May 25th, 2020. Mostly because to what you all wrote, yesterday I had a better day. I woke up today enraged and cannot seem to calm myself. England observes a public holiday today, and I find myself wondering what we would be doing if Mark were here. He never threw a holiday away. I'm furious since, just because some self-serving moron couldn't wait to respond to a text message, I have lost the best person I have ever known in my life. I find the stupidity and unfairness intolerable. He will spend a few years behind bars. Not one thing, though, will bring my Mark back. Sorry, folks. I simply needed to let out a vent. Please, kindly, avoid using your phone while driving. Also, avoid tolerating it if you notice others doing it. March 6th, 2020. I want to highlight 2 points. Firstly, let me thank everyone for their comments. The lovely things you have spoken about Mark have cheered me. It took so long to tell you Mark had died since I never imagined they would. Still, you did help, even though what you said was so poignant that I broke down hundreds of times reading the great words. Second, I'm sorry for not yet answering every comment. On some days I feel I could talk about Mark all day. On others, I cannot even think of him without going to pieces. If I haven't replied to your particular comment, it's not as though I haven't read all of them. Simply said, I can't respond as I have been in a poor state portion of the time. Eventually, I will answer to everyone, much as I did very slowly with the cards during his funeral. It looked like I was climbing a mountain that wouldn't stop expanding, but I finally answered all 322 of them even though I didn't think I would get through them all. One of numerous decent habits I picked up from Mark is finishing what I start. I only want to hear him once more calling me Carrot. Carrot is a Welsh term for love. My name is not Welsh. July 27th, 2020 at 3:10 a.m. Whoa, I hadn't been online for a few days and now hundreds of messages show up. I can't sleep once more, and it came to me that I could change what happened to every one of the characters Mark had penned. It's just the facts. It won't have Mark's style or humor, it's just basic knowledge. Still, it's the most I can accomplish and more than nothing. Starting in the new post on a building project for a distribution center, site manager followed plans exactly. Mark had already mentioned what David and the site manager were dissatisfied about. Though that was before the coronavirus, being on a fixed 18-month contract as a self-employed individual was a drawback when compared to being an employee. Most of the staff were let go after the virus struck. Some were furloughed. The contract required the corporation to maintain paying the site manager whole. What he considered to be a negative aspect turned out to be a saving agent. The last David could tell me about Noisy Gobshite was that he no longer owns a third, as he had to sell his part of the company under pressure. Regarding his assets, he had to sign a personal liability agreement in case total obligations exceeded the company's worth. According to what I understand of it, Noisy Gobshite must pay the extra, even if it means he loses his house. If, for example, the total bills for his mistakes are higher than the company can pay. They couldn't continue trading if he was participating, hence he had to give up his part of the company. He needs them to carry on paying the attorneys. Though he hasn't been charged with a crime yet, he most certainly will. Something to do with wanting to be ready to go to court once he is charged. They take their time researching and being ready before they charge him. It also came to light that he warned of similar, but somewhat more minor, damage to a listed property in 2011. According to David, some anomalies found by the local government during the inquiry were forwarded to HMRC, the taxman. Also under investigation for that scam is Noisy. One of the first remarks on Mark's post was expensive cup of coffee, an understatement if ever I've seen one. The major headlines would be on Noisy Gobshite and the sexual assault, rape, of one of the PAs in the ACC headquarters in 2017, as well as sexual harassment of other employees. Though it wasn't boisterous Gobshite, the sexual assault occurred. It was former finance director. Stories of sexual harassment of female employees have not evolved and proved to be mere gossip. David. Working on his own and without social distance problems, he's most likely one of the few persons who were not impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic both financially and practically. He has carried on rather as normal. Job is easier, he stated. The usual plunkers are not there to trip on my equipment or stick plank ends into my finished work. David is not doing personally very well. David took Mark's death worse than anyone else outside his family. He tries not to show me this. He is a rock when he is with me. He has kept me from falling. Among three persons, he is the one I feel I can truly let go concerning Mark, or so I thought. David's wife was really nice and empathetic when I spoke with her last week, but she had to tell me to hold back a little with David. Although his wife claims he is shattering, he seems strong to me. She says he has taken Mark's death extremely severely. I thought he and Mark were close friends. She claims that in all their marriage, she only saw him cry once, that of their dog's death. When his parents deceased, she missed him crying. She notes he seems lost now and has sobbed quite a few times. The worst thing to find out is that his crying period falls after his visit with me. I'm awful. He obviously was mourning, but I had no idea I was burdening him so much. I'm going to cease venting all my suffering and be more cautious utilizing him. I wish he had said sooner. Maybe I should have known about it instead of being so self-servingly preoccupied with my own loss. That is as far as I'm aware of the updates cover. They are ready to observe his charged with noise. Should he be found guilty of damaging classified buildings, he might find himself imprisoned. Should he be found guilty of fraud, he will almost surely be imprisoned. In either case, the fines will be 6 figures. David mentioned wondering whether he would like prison coffee. His sense of humor is dark. July 27, 2020, at 3:10 a.m. There were alerts for 512 private messages and comments when I first arrived online earlier. I have no idea where to start. If you have written, kindly please not assume I am not appreciative as I have not responded. I felt fit to write at 3:10 a.m., hence I updated. Right now, I doubt I could accomplish it. I have been staring at our weddings video. Though I believed it might help, I feel like a bus has knocked me down. I was devastated by Mark's speech. He discussed our meeting and his return to the house he shared with fellow Royal Marines. One among them asked Mark, "What's the joke then? You're once more smiling about something. Come on, what's so funny here?" Mark claimed he couldn't and wouldn't explain it to them. He just couldn't stop smiling every time he considered our date. Every time he thought of me, he claimed, he felt that. It made me grin and started me to cry on our wedding day, but this morning it broke me. I believe the agony is growing worse rather than becoming less. It bothers me too. All through me I feel it. I can't stop it. All I can think of lately is wish I had been in the car with him if I cannot have him back. Being an atheist, he always advised, "This is all you get, so don't dare waste any of it." Therefore he wouldn't approve of me harming myself. It's just so difficult to keep going with this suffering. I doubt I can. I simply want it stopped. I apologize for carrying on like way. I would convey this to those I know since they worry, but writing here is like shouting into a diary. I apologize to all of you. Though I try to control things, I miss him so much and I can't stop it hurting. What should I do is unknown. August 31st, 2020 is. Although I responded to hundreds of messages since last updating this post, I did not get through all of them. though the screen says I still have 92 waiting. I cannot see or read any more of the messages in chat. Should you not obtain a response, you fall into the 92. Our anniversary yesterday, August 30th, though I was looking forward to it, when it came it was sort of empty. I cried when I viewed our wedding film. I replied to a few messages. Halfway through one message, I became abruptly overwhelmed with the knowledge that all the happiness I will ever experience in my life had already passed by. Every future endeavor I try will just be rewritten as Mark should be here, but he isn't. Everything from here till I die is simply life. Just breathing and watching the days pass. Without Mark, it seems quite meaningless. I'm not sure whether I could write ever more. I appreciate all of you volunteering your time. You're really beautiful folks. Clutch the people you love like you might lose tomorrow. Avoid doing what I did and believe you could live in your own little heavenly bubble always. In the blink of an eye, some lazy morons can destroy all you love, leaving nothing ahead of you. Bye. My parents tried to give my inheritance to their favorite daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. Male 28-year-old comes from a family with a convoluted and long history of favoritism. My younger sister Amy, 25, has always been preferred by my parents, especially Dad, over me. Starting in our childhood, this partiality only got worse as we grew up. Amy was the golden child from my earliest memories. Our parents threw her an elaborate birthday party including professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and a petting zoo when I was 5 and she was 2. I had a store-bought cake and a little family supper for my birthday that same year. This helped to define the tone for years to come. The differences became clearer as we aged. Amy always received the newest toys, the greatest clothes, and most attention. I recall saving months of allowance for a new bike when I was 10 years old. Amy wanted one too, hence she had a fit when she saw it. Rather of educating her about waiting or saving, my parents went right out and got her an even nicer bike than mine. Another arena where the bias was evident was school. Amy's parents attended all of her school functions, while they usually missed mine. I took front stage in the school play in 4th grade. I practiced for weeks, driven by great enthusiasm. My parents arrived an hour late on the night of the play, therefore missing my major scene. They were consoling Amy after she complained of stomachache. She was good later on, they had simply lost count of time playing with her. Regarding academics, nothing I ever appeared to do seemed sufficient. I joined the math club, often received straight A's in middle school, and even took first place in a regional science fair. Though my parents hardly noticed these successes, they gave Amy a celebratory dinner and purchased her a new phone as encouragement to keep getting better when she scored a B+ on one test in her weakest subject. In particular, high school was difficult. With an eye toward their approval, I put myself into whatever activity I could. Along with keeping a 4.0 GPA, I was editor of the school newspaper, debate team captain. Amy coasted through school, hardly keeping a C average, and spent much of her time hanging out with friends. I was chosen from our university as one of 2 junior year applicants to participate in a famous summer program at Harvard. It was such an honor, and I felt great. My dad grumbled and moved the topic to Amy's forthcoming dancing performance when I told the news over supper. At least my mother remarked, "That's nice," but she moved on fast. My parents couldn't bring me to the airport on the night Amy's concert fell on the same day I was leaving Harvard as they wanted to see Amy perform. I asked the parents of a friend for a ride. Another agonizing experience was the college application process. I worked months on improving my essays, engaged in extracurricular activities, and SAT preparation. Several elite colleges accepted me, and I was given a sizable scholarship to my ideal college. When I told my parents about this at supper, their reaction was barely passable. "That's good, but don't let it run to your head. College isn't everything," my dad advised. "Just remember about us when you're off becoming a big shot," my mother said. On the other hand, my parents were quite understanding when Amy barely passed high school and chose not to attend college. They admired her for knowing herself and for defying social expectations. Something they never done for me, they even paid for her a car as a graduation gift. Emotionally, this persistent favoritism suffered me greatly. Over my teens and early 20s, I battled anxiety and despair. Beginning therapy in college, I came to realize that my parents' actions were not my fault. Years of effort were needed to develop my self-esteem and learn to validate myself rather than depending on my parents' approval. My immediate family did not help me, yet I still managed to lead a decent life. By the time I finished from college with honors, I had a decent job in finance and even purchased my own house by 27 years old. Though my parents aren't, I'm glad of what I've accomplished. Here then is where the current drama begins. On Dad's side, my grandfather died not too long ago. He left a sizable estate and was a successful businessman who started from nothing. In his will, he split his possessions equally among his grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins, as well as his children, Dad and his siblings. My portion of the bequest was significant, roughly $500,000. It would have let me invest in my future, pay off my education loans, and perhaps even launch my own company someday. This unanticipated windfall and the chances it could present made me happy. When the will was read, though, my parents clearly became agitated. Later, they drew me aside and said they felt it was unjust I received an equal portion. Amy, who lives in our parents' basement and works part-time at a coffee shop, said she needed the money more since she was suffering. Though stunned, I attempted to keep cool. I clarified that Grandpa made this decision. They had no say on how he decided. They insisted I should act morally and give Amy my fair part. They became enraged when I turned down and began guilt-tripping me, calling me unappreciative and selfish. Every incident my dad could recall where they had helped me came under discussion. Though I worked part-time to help with finances, he emphasized paying for my medically necessary braces, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and allowing me reside at home during college. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the many shopping sprees, and the fact they still support her at 2025. The matter got rapidly more serious. Acting as the will's executor, my dad chose to handle things himself. Along with her own inheritance, he declared he would be interpretation Grandpa's intentions and give Amy my whole part. He said Grandpa would have wished if he had known our unique situation. I was broken. This was not only obviously illegal but also a terrible reminder of how little my parents thought of me. Pointing that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was aware of our circumstances, I tried to reason with them. Then my mother accused me of speaking ill of the deceased by implying Grandpa would have preferred anything else than what my dad was advocating. I mentioned certain memories of Grandpa pushing my academic and career goals, but my parents brushed off these as misinterpretation. They said Grandpa wanted to make sure Amy was taken care of and had privately voiced worry about her future. They had no response when I asked why he hadn't simply penned the will that way then. Amy, for her part, was awkward about the circumstances but did not voice criticism of our parents. She merely shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." When I tried to chat to her alone, she obviously wasn't going to be much help. Feeling misled and wounded, I asked Grandpa's widow, my paternal grandma, for guidance. Hearing what was happening, she became enraged. She informed me that my parents had no authority to alter the will and that this was exactly not what Grandpa had planned. Grandma sent some material that clarifies the matter. Several years ago, apparently, my parents asked Grandpa to give everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had steadfastly objected, saying he thought all of his grandchildren should be treated equally. He had even included a stipulation in his will declaring that anyone challenging the equitable distribution would lose their portion. Equipped with this knowledge, I challenged my parents. Grandma's disclosure of their earlier attempt to effect the will startled them. Saying they were only looking out Amy's future helped my dad try to defend it, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandmother acted right away. She got in touch with her will's other executors and attorney. She also got in touch with my dad's siblings, who shared her equally strong indignation at what he was attempting. Taken together, they stopped my dad's scheme and guaranteed that the will would be carried out as stated. Though they are unhappy with me, my parents were obliged to back off. They argued I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others and accused me of turning the family against me. My mother sobbed over how I had split the family and deceived them. I said I had never expected anything from them anyway, when my dad threatened to cut me out of their will totally. Now, should I accept the inheritance, they are threatening to break off all communication. My dad even went so far as to suggest that I would not be welcome in their house should I inherit it. In a particularly low blow, my mother remarked that my acceptance of the money reveals that I never truly loved them and was merely ready to profit from their passing. The matter splits the extended family. A few of my cousins are encouraging since they understand the long-standing favoritism and value me for advocating myself. Others believe I should have yielded in order to preserve peace since family harmony comes first over financial considerations. Although my dad's siblings are definitely on my side, this has strained their relationship as well as my parents. Amy finds herself enmeshed in all this. She confided in me privately that although she feels bad and didn't ask for this, she is not ready to challenge our parents. She's been trained her whole life to depend on them and seek their praise, hence I don't blame her totally. Still, a part of me longs she would help me just once. This circumstance has brought out a lot of past suffering and bitterness. I find myself remembering all the times I was passed over or discounted in favor of Amy, The birthday celebrations I missed, the school functions my parents missed, the successes that went unreported. This one occurrence seems to be bringing to a head a lifetime of unfairness. Though the whole affair has caused a great divide in the family, I am keeping my ground and want to take my inheritance as Grandpa meant. My parents hardly talk to me, and family get-togethers have grown awkward. I missed our monthly family meal last week for the first time ever since I could stand the cold shoulders and accusing glares. Though there is turmoil, a tiny bit of me feels empowered. I'm confronting the unfair treatment by my parents for the first time in my life. I'm declaring my value and refuse to be written off. It's both terrible and freeing at once. Though I think I'm in the right here, the family drama is draining me. Something I hadn't experienced since college, I have started having anxiety attacks once more. To assist handle all this stress, I'm thinking about returning to therapy. Am I the one who should have refused to comply with my parents' expectations and accepted my inheritance? Should I have simply handed Amy the money to maintain peace? Although I'm bored of being the family scapegoat, I also fear losing my family totally. Any guidance or viewpoint would be much valued. Update. Since my first post 6 months ago, a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and guidance. It truly kept me strong during trying circumstances. Let me start with the legal aspect of things. Many of you advised, and I did see my own attorney. He verified that I had every right to inherit and that what my dad attempted was in fact illegal. He helped me record everything and ready to act legally should needed. Fortunately, things did not transpire as such. Along with my dad's siblings, my grandma and her attorney worked out matters without involving court. I got my whole fortune and the will was carried out exactly as intended. Because of his will manipulation attempts, my dad was removed as an executor. This was a somewhat demanding process spanning several weeks. My parents threatened litigation. There were tense meetings and furious phone calls, but ultimately the law was unambiguous and they had to back off. Still ongoing though, the family fallout has been noteworthy. At first, my parents doubled down on their viewpoint. They charged me with being avaricious and neglectful of my sister. They also sought to mobilize other family members against me, disseminating allegations that I had somehow coerced Grandpa into giving me money. Luckily, most of the family saw through their trickery. About 1 month following the will's acceptance, there was one really unpleasant occurrence at a family gathering. When my parents showed there unannounced, my aunt was hosting and hadn't asked them to come. They started a scene, starting to shout about how I had taken from Amy and corrupted Grandma against her. My dad became saying I had ruined all these wonderful memories. My mother flung an old photo album squarely at my feet. It was awkward and terrible. It took several relatives to cool things down and persuade my parents to leave. Bless her heart, my grandmother turned out to be my most powerful supporter over all of this. She related tales of how my grandfather had always been pleased of my achievements and how he especially wanted to make sure all his grandchildren had equal chances. She even said Grandpa had maintained a scrapbook of my accomplishments, newspaper clippings of academic honors, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from that university play my parents had been late for. This insight was sad as well as wonderful. Grandma also volunteered to straighten the records with the wider family. She organized a family gathering excluding my parents, laying out the entire history of my parents' partiality, including events I had long forgotten or never ever heard about. Having someone at last recognize the unfairness I had gone through for years was vindicating, but it also reopened old scars. About my sister Amy, she at last found her voice in all this. She came to me personally and apologized for not sticking up for me earlier after some soul-searching and several long talks with our grandmother. She said she thought our parents' preference was improper, but she had been too terrified to confront it. We discussed our childhood and how it influenced both of us in great length and emotional intensity. Amy admitted that being the favorite child wasn't as wonderful as it seemed. She never learned how to stand on her 2 feet and felt great pressure to live up to our parents' expectations. She told tales of times she yearned to accomplish things on her own, but our parents would swoop in and handle everything for her, therefore depriving her of the opportunity to develop and learn from her mistakes. For our relationship, this talk marked a sea change. We began to mend the sibling link our parents' partiality had broken. Just the two of us have been routinely meeting for coffee to discuss and encourage one another through this family crisis. Declaring that she was going to pay for college with her inheritance astonished everyone. She claimed seeing me stand up for myself motivated her to start managing her own life. Once she decided what she wanted to study, she registered in a nearby community college, first intending to transfer to a 4-year university. Our parents let out startled gasps. They knew, I believe, that their babying had not done Amy any favors. The response of my parents to all this has been diverse and changing. They first attacked both of us angrily. They tried to guilt Amy into quitting college to help the family since they said I turned her against them. They changed strategy when that proved ineffective. After several protracted talks with my grandmother and seeing Amy's great transformation, my mother began to recognize how damaging their actions had been. She has made some hesitant moves toward reconciliation, even beginning therapy to address her problems. She got in touch to apologize, owning that she had been unfair and requesting a chance to right things. It's a slow process, and while I'm gently hopeful, I'm also keeping strong limits. Sadly, my dad has been less likely to own any mistakes. Still furious, he feels as though he is the victim in all this. He has been chilly toward Amy since she chose to go to college and hardly speaks to me. He has tried a few times to control us, threatening to sell our childhood house should we fail to come to our senses or forgiving us should we realize we were wrong. Although we are both standing strong, it hurts to see him distance both of his children like this. The dynamics among the extended family have changed dramatically. I now live closer to my dad's siblings, who have been quite helpful, and my grandmother. Having heard from my aunts and uncles about handling my dad's challenging conduct over the years, it has lessened my loneliness in this fight. Deeper bonds with some of my cousins who stood by me have also developed. Starting a monthly cousin meal allows us to all catch up free from the drama of the older generations. For myself, I have been making sensible use of my inheritance. Having paid off my college loans, I now feel an amazing degree of financial freedom. Working with a financial advisor, I have assembled a varied investment portfolio. I have also set aside some funds to maybe launch my own company some years forward. Opening a community center with reasonably priced mental health treatments and financial literacy seminars is something I'm investigating. But for me, buying therapy for myself and volunteering to do the same for Amy has been the most significant application of the money. Both of us are learning to set reasonable limits with our parents and are working on healing from our childhood events. Though it's a long road, I already feel as though I'm developing in knowledge and ability to overcome emotional neglect and long-term partiality. This whole process has brought some surprising good improvements into my life. I now know a great deal about establishing limits and defending myself. Though I know I did the right thing, it hasn't been easy and there are still difficult days. I feel good about myself for resisting guilt and pressure. Among the most unexpected results has been a change in my work path. Dealing with all this family conflict and undergoing therapy has helped me to see my own passion about supporting people who, dealing with all this family dysfunction and doing therapy has helped me to see how driven I am about supporting others who have gone through same family dynamics. Currently thinking about returning to school to specialize in adult children of emotionally immature parents and work as a family therapist. I have also been helping youngsters from challenging family homes at a nearby youth facility. Being able to offer the kind of encouragement and support I wish I had had as a youngster is immensely satisfying. I'm even considering creating a scholarship fund for children from same circumstances using some of my inheritance. My contact with Amy has kept getting better. Once a month, we have a siblings' day when we do something entertaining, just the two of us. Our hiking and picnic last month was the most laid back and connected we had felt since we were small children. Without our parents' influence, we are gently reconstructing our connection on our own terms. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change though. He still says he'd done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and is proud of us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding, thus she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in same circumstances, I would wish to advise not let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours. Even if it generates controversy, it's reasonable to defend yourself. Though family dynamics might be complex, you are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people, and don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change though. He still says he'd done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride of us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding, thus she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in same circumstances, I would wish to advise not let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours. Even if it generates controversy, it's reasonable to defend yourself. Though family dynamics might be complex, you are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people, and don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. My mom favored my sister and ignored me. In the end, my perfect sister ran off with mom's money, leaving her devastated. I was 23 years old and lived at home with my mom, 52 years old, and older sister, 26 years old. This manner of life persisted after my dad's death 5 years ago. Emma, my sister, was mom's favorite from the beginning. Anyone who spent even 5 minutes with our family could see this. It wasn't just me. When she was a kid, Emma was the center of attention and the recipient of all the newest fashions and technology. Even though mom never missed an Emma school function, she would make up an excuse like, "I'm too tired," or "I have to work late," whenever I asked her to attend my own. Eventually, I grew accustomed to the pain. There was little change as we aged. While Emma attended a prominent university to get a law degree, I got my associate's degree in graphic design from a small college. Emma was the object of mom's incessant boasting. "My Emma is going to be a big-shot lawyer one day," she would proudly proclaim. All the while, people either didn't care or were downright disappointed by my chosen work path. However, the true problem wasn't merely favoritism, it was the unequal allocation of domestic duties. I was supposed to handle all the housework since Emma was supposed to be studying. When I say all, I really do mean it. I would begin my day at 6 o'clock every morning. Making breakfast would be my first order of business. Emma favored a vegetable omelet accompanied by a serving of fruit, while mom liked her eggs cooked to perfection with toast and no crust. In my regular state, I would hastily seize a granola bar for my own consumption. Before going out to my part-time job at a nearby coffee shop, I would tidy up the kitchen, wash the dishes, and begin a load of laundry after breakfast. Despite mom's lack of request, I worked there to help out around the house and save up for my own place. I would do everything from dusting to mopping, vacuuming, and everything in between as soon as I got home in the afternoon. Meal planning and grocery buying were also my responsibilities. This was never easy because both Mom and Emma had very specific nutritional needs. Even the dinner was a show. While Emma sat on the couch, fiddling with her phone, I would whip up extravagant dinners. Talking to her mom about her day, school, and future goals was a regular occurrence. Word of mouth would be an uphill battle for me. Guess who had to do the dishes after supper? I am, once again. Mom would give me a disapproving look and say things like, "Your sister needs to focus on her studies," whenever I ventured to complain or ask for assistance. One day, she will have a prosperous life and be able to provide for all of us. Assisting around the house would be the bare minimum you can do. Emotionally and physically, it was draining. While Emma was free to unwind and have fun, I felt like a housekeeper in my own house, rushing around all the time. Worst part was that Mom was completely unconcerned with my attempts. From that point on, it was Emma this and Emma that. Things reached a boiling point on a certain day. I was hoping to reconnect with some college pals that day, because it was a Saturday. Our design class was going to have us work on a collaborative project. The opportunity to leave the house and engage in social interaction that did not include serving coffee or doing chores was more than enough to make me look forward to it all week, and not only because of the project. As is my habit, I got up bright and early to finish my errands before I left. My mom walked into the kitchen just as I was preparing breakfast. "Oh great, you're awake," she remarked. "Today, I'm counting on you to give the living room a good scrub. We need to scrub the carpet and remove and wash the curtains." My chest ached. "But Mom," I said, "today I am scheduled to..." "Remember when I told you about our group project?" Mom scowled. "You can reschedule, right? Do not overlook this. Next week we have company coming over, and I would like the house to be spotless." In an effort to maintain composure, I inhaled deeply. "We will have to reschedule. This has been in the works for weeks. Perhaps Emma could pitch in and clean a little." It was almost 10 in the morning when Emma, seemingly at a whim, strolled into the kitchen still dressed in her pajamas. "Morning," she said with a yawn as she reached for a muffin from the platter I had just placed. Turning to Emma, Mom's expression softened. "Hello there, darling. Had a good night's sleep? Rest assured, there will be an online study group meeting later on." With a muffin still in her mouth, Emma nodded. Mom redirected her gaze to me, her face becoming even more stern. "Your sister needs to get some serious schoolwork done. No one should expect her to clean. Her education is of the utmost importance to you." Something inside of me snapped. Every bit of pent-up resentment, animosity, and pain finally burst forth. "And what about my education?" I spoke more loudly as I inquired. "What will happen to my plans? This is my life. Isn't their significance immense?" Mom appeared surprised, to which she responded, "Of course they matter, but..." I interrupted her. "But it's still not equal to Emma's, is it? Never on par with Emma's." Finally speaking up was Emma, who had been observing this discussion with wide eyes. "Stop including me in this, please. When Mom wants you to help out around the house, it's not my fault." I was already furious before that. "Although you have never once offered to lend a hand, please don't take this personally. Sit back and enjoy the ride." Mom made an effort to step in. "Now let's all calm down. There's no need to..." Still, I was feeling very well at the moment. I was helpless as years of suppressed feelings finally broke out. "No more settling down for me, Mom. I've had enough of being the housekeeper. Treating me like Emma is beneath me, and I'm sick of it. Everything, including the partiality and unreasonable expectations, has had enough of me." I looked across at Emma. "Why does Mom never ask you to help out with housework?" Her reasoning is that she believes you have great potential to become wealthy and provide for her in the years to come. It's quite the burden, isn't it? But well, at least I'm doing all the work, so you can relax. Redness spread across Emma's face. "You can't be fair. My education are a top priority for me. And I don't..." My response was a rapid one. "In addition to schooling and taking care of the house, I'm working part-time. When will it be safe to think about the future?" Again, Mom attempted to intervene. "You are aware, my darling, that we value all that you do? The difference is that Emma's chosen profession will, in the end, pay off more handsomely." A slap in the face was the feeling I got from such remarks. "Is that all? Is the amount of money I could make in the future the only thing that matters to this family?" Mom swiftly reversed her course. "No, it is not my intention. Compared to what you're studying, a job in law offers more stability. Coloring and design, Mom. One of my majors is graphic design. Is it so important that you've taken the time to research my life goals and aspirations?" I knew exactly what to do based on Mom's expression. She was unconcerned. Without ever truly comprehending it, she had dismissed my career path. I pushed back the tears that threatened to well up in my eyes. At this very moment, I would not weep. What do you think? That's it. Today, I will not be cleaning the living room. I intend to get down with my pals and get some stuff done on my project. Plus, I'm leaving the house until we have a serious talk about how things work here when I return. I then snatched my suitcase and bolted from the kitchen, leaving Mom and Emma standing there in disbelief. A strange feeling of relief mingled with fury and hurt as I banged the front door shut behind me. I had finally spoken out for myself after what felt like an eternity. The remainder of the day slipped my mind. In an effort to forget about the argument from earlier, I got together with my pals and dove headfirst into our project. The day progressed though, and uncertainties began to arise. Did I react too strongly? Had I been self-centered? Perhaps I should have simply rearranged my plans and cleaned up as Mom requested. Note, I got back to my house that night, emotionally and intellectually drained by the day's events, but still intent on keeping my word and having that serious talk. But the tension was palpable the moment I stepped through the door. When I walked into the living room, neither Mom nor Emma gave me a second look. With some hesitation, I spoke up and asked, "Hey, can we talk?" No sound. Both of them peered intently at the television, but it was clear that neither of them was paying attention. I gathered my courage, inhaled deeply, and chose to go ahead anyhow. "Listen, I get that you had a long morning, but I feel like we have to talk about this. Emma, all I'm asking is that you pitch in a bit more with the housework. I would feel more comfortable if we were treated fairly." Mom finally turned to look at me, her face showing no emotion. "I think you've said quite enough already," Emma interjected, her tone betraying her contempt. "Indeed, your voice was clearly audible to us earlier today. You're envious of my future prospects and me. How egocentric are you?" I was hit square in the stomach. Is it egocentric? Asking for aid isn't selfish in any way. Grandma scowled. "It's like you're breaking the silence in this house. Her education should be Emma's top priority. You're simply envious because you're aware that your small pastime won't be very successful. Hobby." I said it again, my jaw dropping. "Graphic design is a real career, Mom, if you'd ever bothered to learn about it." "Enough," Mom interrupted me. "I won't have you disrespecting us like this in our own home." Abashed, I remained still. It had been my sincere wish that they would have considered my words and come to terms with how unfair things had been. Nevertheless, they redoubled their efforts. "Our very own home," I murmured again. "I see. I suppose it's no longer my home." I retreated to my room after saying nothing further. I returned outside after stowing a few articles of clothing and necessities in a bag and retrieving my laptop. Mom and Emma continued to stare fixedly at me from the living room. "I'll be at Sarah's," I texted, mentioning my college best buddy. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later." Relieved and heartbroken all at once, I slammed the door behind me. Unfortunately, I needed some breathing room to figure out what to do next, so I resorted to this temporary measure. Unlike at Sarah's, I wouldn't be made to feel like an inferior or treated like a maid. I have no idea what the future holds, but I am certain that I am entitled to better than this. I should begin to believe that now. Update. I must admit, leaving my family home has been an eye-opening experience. It has been approximately 3 months since I made the move. My friend Sarah has been my roommate, and we've been dividing up the rent and housework evenly. Everything I do on a daily basis has changed. Since I no longer have to worry about taking care of the house, I've had more time than ever before to devote to my education and my emerging profession as a graphic designer. I've interned at a regional marketing agency, finished a number of freelance jobs, and am now building my portfolio. When you're not worn out from being a maid for other people, you can do so much. However, unexpected events do happen in life. While grocery shopping last week, I unexpectedly ran into Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor. She looked worried and wanted to know how I was doing before she inquired about Mom. Evidently, she had observed Mom's recent struggles and apparent overwhelm while tending to the yard. According to Mrs. Johnson, your mother insisted she was fine, despite her offer of assistance. I was under the impression that Emma was assisting her. A wave of shame and anger washed over me. Obviously, Emma was making everything worse. Since when would she begin? The most shocking thing, though, wasn't even that. In her usual gossipy but well-intentioned manner, Mrs. Johnson spilled yet another bombshell. "And how is Emma's academic progress coming along? I pray that the incident involving Professor Andrews has not had a significant impact on her." Mrs. Johnson's eyes expanded, so I must have appeared perplexed. "Oh no, I guess you were aware. Professor Andrews and Emma have been spotted all over town together quite a bit. There has been discussion. Feeling disoriented, I thanked Mrs. Johnson and limped out of the store. My ideal sister Emma was careening around with a professor instead of concentrating on her promising legal career. The neighbors even took note and started chatting about it. So it must have been really major. I was unhappy most of the time, but there was a twisted satisfaction in there somehow. The golden child wasn't all that golden after all. It broke my heart to see Mom trying to get everything done that I used to do on her alone. Tragic for Emma, who put her career in jeopardy for a professor's romance. I felt terrible for our family since it appeared like everything was coming to a crumbling end without me. Given this data, I am unsure of my next steps. While a part of me longs to make amends and reach out, another part recalls the pain and years of inferiority and questions whether it's worthwhile. My personal development and recovery are my current priorities. Self-worth and my chosen profession are becoming more apparent to me. A life where my worth is recognized and my efforts are valued is something I'm working toward. Perhaps Mom and Emma will come to terms with what they've lost in due time. Perhaps they will not. I used to try so hard to win their favor, but now that I'm on my own, I recognize that it was a mistake. The circle of life always seems to close, doesn't it? When I finally felt like I had things under control 6 months later, life decided to throw me another curveball. My phone rang on a peaceful Sunday night while I worked on a freelancing assignment. Yeah, Mom. Since my departure, we hadn't had many conversations, so I was hesitant to respond. My mother's inconsolable wailing greeted me when I took up the phone. Mom, what's wrong? My pulse pounding, I inquired. She choked out, Emma's gone, as she sobbed. She took the most of my savings when she ran off with a boy from her university. The sensation was as if someone had doused me with icy water. Hearing that Emma had done something so careless and damaging was upsetting since, despite everything, she was still my sister. I'm coming over, I announced, hastily retrieving my keys. My heart nearly burst at the sight of my childhood house when I arrived. Compared to the spotless home Mom had usually kept, the house was in utter disarray. Even though it had just been a few months, Mom appeared to have aged significantly. She started crying again the second she laid eyes on me. I couldn't make sense of the conflicting feelings coursing through me as I comforted her while she sobbed. Mom gave me a glance with crimson-rimmed eyes once she cooled down. I've been so foolish, she whispered. The last several months have really enlightened me. I was completely mistaken on a lot of things, including you and Emma. She grasped both of my hands. Even though you were the reliable one who I could always rely on, I failed to recognize your worth and instead treated you like a commodity. My deepest apologies, my love. My own eyes started to brim up with tears. I never imagined I would get this kind of recognition, yet here it was. I want you, even though I know I don't deserve it, Mom went on to say. Are you thinking about returning home? Trust me when I say things are going to change. Looking at Mom, vulnerable and sincerely sorry, made me realize I couldn't turn my back on her, no matter how much I wanted to deny in order to shield myself from more harm. All right, Mom, I whispered. I'll come back, but things really do need to be different this time. A wave of relief swept over her as she enthusiastically nodded. They will be, I promise. Now I find myself back in my childhood home. It's weird, unsettling, yet somehow soothing all at once. My mother and I are working on improving our communication and mutual appreciation. My graphic design work has captured her attention, and she has even asked me to teach her the basics. Collaboratively, we are cleaning up the house and resolving the financial crisis that Emma caused. It's challenging, but we're making it work. We have not received any communication from Emma. She has my deepest sympathies, and I pray she is safe, but I can't shake the rage she inspired. Thanks to Mom's understanding, I'm able to keep up with my internship and freelancing job. Finding that sweet spot is going to take some time, but we're getting there. What is ahead is completely unknown to me. A part of me is still cautious, still trying to keep my emotions under check, but I also have hope. Perhaps this is the opportunity for a new beginning that our family has been seeking. For the time being, it suffices. It's not the happily ever after I had envisioned, but it is real. With my sister-in-law was great. Apart from missing my spouse, who I spoke with a few times a day, everything was going perfectly. Being a night owl, I stayed in the living room binge-watching House of the Dragon when everyone went to bed yesterday. I probably nodded out on the couch. Later on when I woke up, my nephew's hand was under my shirt. I shoved him away, but he held my mouth and pulled me back on the couch. A few times he struck me hard, telling me to stop moving. I swung a cola glass I had on the coffee table against him. My sister-in-law came downstairs after hearing him grunting in agony. She began battering him and shoving him away. She asked him to visit the guest house, and she followed him most likely to check his head damage since he was bleeding. Later on, she returned and showed me to the bathroom. I had cut my hand with the glass and had peed myself. Later on, she stayed with me in the room and handed me sleeping drugs. Today at midday I woke up. Everyone but my sister-in-law was away. Every bit of warmth has disappeared. She said she was quite let down by me. I used her son even though she invited me into her house. She saw everything. She knew the truth, I told her. She said she saw nothing and that nobody would have believed someone like me. She wondered whether breaking this family on my conscience would be in line with my values. She blocked my path when I wanted to depart, since what would the family say? I vowed I wouldn't say anything, then started to cry and asked her to let me go. I'm home now and not sure what to do. My husband will be destroyed from this. His family is his pride and jewel in life. He adores them. Suppose he hates me for shattering his family and tarnishing their name. Worse, supposing he doesn't believe me. 3 weeks from now he will be home. By then most likely the black eye will have disappeared. Edit. I apologies. I messed his age. He will be turning 16 in a few months. He is 15. I produced poor arithmetic. Edit 2. I appreciate you answered. I apologies for not answering every query. I should say that lately I spoke with my husband. For him, the regular planned phone call before bed is, but I simply broke down crying and told him everything. FaceTimed me and saw my face. He never likes me to be home alone, hence he told me to prepare a suitcase and wait for his friend to come pick me up. After little more than a year of marriage, my husband and I have been living in this city, his hometown, for a few months. Here I know not many people. Still, he advised me to live with his friend and his family. Good people are those they are. Tomorrow he is flying back here. Thank you. I apologize once more for not being able to respond to everyone. Update. Hi everyone, this is a throwaway account. I got much of encouragement when I wrote here earlier. I owe 100% to the online community for which I followed the right course and informed my husband. If it were up to me and my own ideas and I would have just kept this private and tried to go on. I do not want to read all the disgusting and abusive DMs like the ones I received from my first article. Hence I will not respond any DMs. I would gladly respond to your comments here, but following this update I am removing this account as well. I would wish to respond to a couple inquiries. First one, a query on my most recent update. Why did my husband believe me without asking questions? Many conjectured that my spouse wasn't very astonished since he presumably knew something about his nephew. No, I asked him this. He simply believes me, not noticing the injuries on my face. I have never given him any grounds not to believe or trust me. Why would my spouse advise me to live with the family of his friend? Many asked why I wasn't independent enough to live on my own alone. To me, this is a brand new town. Coming from a large city with people all around to go to a smaller village as living alone in a large house changed me greatly. I was uneasy, hence my husband advised me to live with his sister and get close to my new family. After what happened though, I returned home. The acts of his nephew stunned my husband, and to be honest, he had no idea what to anticipate from his parents or nephew anymore. He didn't want me alone as he was afraid they might hurt me. He insisted that I kept his family in dark about where I was also. He was just afraid. I apologize for also mistaking his age. Born November 06, he will turn 16 shortly. I made him 17 by doing the arithmetic wrong. The next day following my post, my husband arrived home late in the afternoon. Seeing him now makes me happier than it did years ago. He told his sister he was on his way when phoning her. He looked to have been crying when he returned home. He urged me to pursue charges, but only if I wanted. He questioned whether I wanted to do it. She tried to point the finger on me when he was at his sister's, but he advised her to cease the bullshit. If she truly loved her son, he questioned her why she wasn't more concerned about him, the way he progressed to overpowering a sleeping family member. He also wanted her to explain why she handed me sleeping drugs. About that, I have no idea why I grabbed them. I recently did. Since childhood, I have sadly always followed those I considered to have control over me. She said she couldn't help me relax as I was having panic attacks. She still thought I came onto him though, and denied that her son had behaved in such manner. When my husband spoke with his nephew as well, he was disappointed to see that he showed almost any regret or affectivity at all. He never even offered an apology. I hit him. He said he was attempting to wake me awake as the couch wasn't comfortable. We have written a report. Not much more I could do. To be honest, I wanted it to be out there even if I don't see anything coming The brother of my spouse called to shout at him. Starting with the smear campaign, they have already my spouse shared with them my side. I'm not sure the person they decide to believe. 6 siblings make up my husband's family. We will have to watch this develop. My spouse doesn't particularly want to damage his nephew, who is still a child. He feels he needs aid, but not the kind his parents are providing, enabling him. He also expressed the feeling that many of you have. This lad will do it once more most likely, and I wasn't first. He loves him very deeply, thus it hurts him. But he has to tell others what he is capable of doing to safeguard their families. Over past few days, my hubby has been quiet and aloof. About that, I had no idea what to do. Simply said, I felt somewhat ashamed. I wasn't sure if I should ask his pardon and apologize to him for souring his relationship with his beloved sister and her family. He looked shocked at me when I at last plucked the bravery to do it. He started to cry and admitted he was the one sorry. He saw himself at last providing the large family I had always dreamed of. He held me. I have nothing about my family. I sobbed in his arms. Right now, we are not sure what will happen. Our plans call for us returning to the large city. About my new employment, I have no idea what to do. After a few months, I have to stop. Since I teach preschool, it should not be difficult for me to get a new job or retrieve my former one. Still, thanks once more. I doubt I will be posting going forward. I simply want to move on and heal.